Well, welcome to Tipping Spears with Hannah Becker. Today's conversation promises to be an insightful one with a remarkable guest. Whether it's your first time tuning in or you're one of our regular listeners, we are honored to have you with us. Our mission is to connect you with the visionary leaders shaping our future. And today we're especially proud to welcome Lieutenant General Dana Atkins to the conversation. Welcome to Tipping Spears, General Atkins.
Thanks, Hannah. Glad to be with you.
So I'll give the guests just a little bit of your background. You've had such an expansive and incredibly inspiring career. This is just a snippet. So General Atkins is a distinguished military officer and private sector business leader. He served as the 9th President and Chief Executive Officer of Military Officers Association of America, the nation's largest and most influential association of military officers. For those of you that aren't aware, MOAA does incredible advocacy work. It's actually how I met General Atkins when he was in that position and advocating for benefits and programs for veterans, service members, and military families. Prior to his appointment to MOAA, Atkins was the president of Chronicle Media, a large media and marketing services firm in Augusta, Georgia. When he retired from the Air Force in 2012, he was serving as the commander of Alaskan Command, Alaska NORAD Region, Joint Task Force Alaska, and the 11th Air Force at Joint Base Randolph-Richardson, Alaska. During his military career, he served as a command pilot with more than 4,000 hours in fighter aircraft, as vice commander of the 7th Air Force and U.S. Air Force Korea, as director of operations, the J3 U.S. Pacific Command, and as Special Assistant to the Supreme Allied Commander Europe during the air war over Serbia. He flew as a demonstration pilot for both the European A-10 demonstration team and the U.S. Air Force Thunderbirds. Atkins earned his bachelor's degree in biology from the University of Portland and holds 2 master's degrees, one in aeronautical science from Embry-Riddle Aeronautic University and another in national security strategy from the National War College. Well, that's quite a career journey you've had. I wondered if you'd just kind of start us off today by telling listeners where your story begins.
Sure, Hannah. I mean, I always smile when somebody always introduces me and then reads that whole, gyration there like this. And I always tell everybody, my mom told me I wasn't going to amount to anything if I didn't study. And I go, see, Mom, I fooled you like this. So yeah. So my career, it really traces back, leaving high school, I think. So in high school, I graduated from high school in 1972. I wasn't the valedictorian of my class, but I was a good student. I knew I was a good student. And I had a dream at the time. The dream for me was to go to college and be a doctor. In fact, I even wanted to be a pediatrician. I don't know why I was even thinking about that, but I thought well ahead that I wanted to be a doctor. Unfortunately, in the sense of unfortunately, I grew up in a very blue collar family. My parents had, limited resources, and the offer I got from my parents was, well, we'll help you. You can live at home, and you won't have to pay any room and board. But beyond that, you're going to have to make your own way. So you're going to have to pay for your own tuition, vehicles, all the incidentals that go along with seeking a college degree. Well, at 18 years old, living at home still, like staying at home and living at home wasn't really exciting. And so I decided I wanted to do something else. And in 1972, as you recall, that was kind of the drawdown of the Vietnam War. The military wasn't a real popular place to go or even pursue. But I had an uncle in the military who was stationed at Hamilton Air Force Base in Northern California. And I grew up in Portland, Oregon. We would drive down Interstate 5 to go see Uncle Ed. And I was always kind of enamored by the Air Force. He would take us out on the flight line. And as a little guy, he'd set me in the plane and I'd, pretend like I'm driving the plane or whatever it was. And would just get excited. But, and I saw my uncle as kind of bigger than life. I mean, he was, in uniform. He was a very handsome guy and tall. And I just remembered that. I knew that at the time in 1972 that the Air Force had a recruiting challenge, as they do today. But one of the recruiting incentives at the time, as you know, was the GI Bill. So if you came into the military, you served 4 years, then in fact, you would get tuition assistance to go to a university of your choice. And so I thought, well, that's the way I'm going to do it then. I'm going to go into the military and I'm going to pursue my degree, but I'm going to get help from, by the GI Bill. I'd gone and talked to a recruiter and I took the battery of test. I think they call them ASVAB or whatever, but I took the battery of test and I did well in the battery of test. And I remember the recruiter asking me at one time, well, what do you want to do in the Air Force? And I go, well, I want to be a doctor like this. And he said, well, it's not that easy like this. You have to come in, and obviously if you're going to be a doctor, there's a lot of education and training that goes along with that. But I said, well, then if I come into the Air Force, can I just do anything that would be in the health, field like this, so I would get at least some experience in healthcare. And he said, well, yeah, but we don't, at this time in 1972, we don't have any guaranteed job placements. And so you'd have to go to basic training. And then while you're at basic training, there's a period where you'll meet with these career developers and you'll tell them what you want to do, and they'll try to align your desires with the needs of the Air Force. So I went into the Air Force with still the expectations that I'm probably going to end up in a hospital someplace, working in a hospital in some aspect of healthcare. And I remember going to that one meeting, or that meeting that they had at basic training, that I was supposed to tell somebody what my desires were, and they were going to match my desires with the needs of the Air Force. And at the end of basic training, our assignments were handed out. And I remember getting my assignment from Tech Sergeant Salazar, who was my training instructor at the time. And it was just a small little piece of paper, and I was going to go DDA to Barksdale Air Force Base to be a 291XO. And I went, I don't even know what this means like this. And so, a bit shy, I went up to Tech Sergeant Salazar and I said, what does this all mean? And he goes, oh, DDA. Well, that's direct duty assignment. So you're going to go right to Barksdale Air Force Base directly, and you're going to learn your job on the job training. And he goes, you're not going to go to a tech school or whatever it is. And then I said, oh, okay. Well, what's 291XO mean? He said, oh, that. And he pulled out a little book, and he looked up 291XO, and he goes, Comm Center Specialist. And I said, excuse me? He goes, yeah, you're going to go work in a communications center. I go, well, that's not what I told them. I told them I wanted to get into healthcare. And he just laughed. He goes, hey, listen, Atkins, it's the needs of the Air Force, not your desires. And so I was disappointed, to be honest with you. I was disappointed. And so I went to my very first duty station. And fortunately, that was my very first experience with what I would call great leadership, right? I mean, just people who led well and who cared about you and cared about your future and how they could help you navigate that. And that individual was Lieutenant Bob Palmietto. And he sat down with me and asked me what I wanted to do. And I told him, well, I thought I was going to be a doctor and wanted to do healthcare and stuff. And he said, well, listen, just right now, you can do this job. Just do your very best as you possibly can in this position right now, because you're going to get an evaluation. But there's a period that I think it was after 1 year, you could ask for a reassignment into a different career field. So he goes, just wait it out here, and then you could ask for a reassignment, and possibly, obviously if you get good evaluations, there's a high probability that you could get a career change. Well, within 1 year, he actually came back to me and said, hey, Airman Atkins, because I was just a two-striper at the time. Airman Atkins, you should look at this. And it was a daily bulletin. And I should look at the daily bulletins because there was stuff for sale. You could buy somebody's stereo, or you could, whatever it was. It was just a little, they call it like a rag or something, rag paper, but I never read it for anything informative. I read it for, hey, what's for sale that I might get a real good deal on. But anyway, he said, you got to look into this. And it was all acronyms, right? AFROTC, whatever. And I go, I don't understand this. He goes, well, let's go over to the education office. And so what it was the Air Force at the time was offering scholarships, either to the Air Force Academy or to a university of your choice that offered Air Force ROTC. And so you had to make this application. And so I made the application, but he actually sat down with me and helped me kind of fill out the application. Then I had to take what they call AFOQT test, which is the Air Force Officer Qualifying Test, which is a battery of tests. I think there were like 5 different sections to it, whatever. Anyway, I had taken, you could go get some practice tests just to kind of get some familiarity with what they're like and the kind of questions. But he recognized that I might need a little bit, some help in, I think it was in some math like this. So he goes, you could probably use some help in strengthening some of your math here. And so he actually sat down with me. I mean, we'd have like these brown bag lunches. He'd say, come into my office, bring your lunch or whatever it is. And then he would go over like math problems with me and just kind of self-tutor with me. And so then I went and took the AFOQT test and I did, I surprised myself. I did remarkably well on the AFOQT test. And so some time had elapsed. And then one day he walked into the office and he goes, hey, Atkins, I got some good news and some bad news for you. And I said, oh, okay. He said, well, the good news is you got accepted for the scholarship like this. And it's an Air Force ROTC scholarship, university of your choice. However, within 2 weeks, you have to tell us what university you're going to. And I'm going, oh my gosh, like this. And so, it's not easy. You can't just say, well, I'm going to go to Stanford like this. Well, no, the university has to accept you too, right? So the easy way out though, for me was, I grew up in Portland, Oregon. I was very familiar with the University of Portland, a small Catholic university, very expensive, but they offered Air Force ROTC. So I asked my father to go down and talk to the university president. And at the time was Father Walschmidt was the university president. And my father went down and he took his son's transcripts, and a father's appeal, to the university president. And my dad said, yeah, like on the sidewalk in front of the registrar's office, Father Walschmidt said, sure, we'll take your son. And so I got accepted, to University of Portland in a really short time span. So don't quote me on this one, but I think I went into the Air Force, active duty, to basic training on the 5th of August, 1972, and was discharged on the 8th of August, 1973. So I think it was like 1 year and 3 days. And I was sitting at the end of August, I was sitting in a classroom at University of Portland with a full ride, four-year ride to the University of Portland. So, I always go back and always tell everybody, hey, first of all, like for instance, I went through that recruiting thing where I was a little bit disappointed, but the recruiter never really lied to me or anything like this. I mean, maybe they built up my expectations more than, that was going to be delivered, but they didn't lie to me like this. And actually the recruiter said, even having reviewed my ASVAB scores, he said, you have some potential here. I mean, at least the tests are telling us that you have some potential here like this. And so it all came full circle like this. So it just kind of, and in some cases I would say fell in my lap, but I don't think it really fell in my lap, because I think the reason that Lieutenant Palmiero had a willingness to help me is because I was trying to help myself too, right? I was coming to work on time. I was working hard. I was learning my job, and somebody that I think that he could trust and depend on. And that kind of starts off, becoming a theme of my own leadership, right? Is hey, somebody took their time to help me like this. And so I recognize that. And as my career progressed, I tried to find those opportunities too, to help other people that I thought, could need a little bit of a push like this. While I was in ROTC at the University of Portland, and I was a pre-med major, but I made an application to med school, but didn't get accepted my first application, which is not unheard of. Often you have to make multiple applications, and the Air Force had come back to me and said, well, if you want to reapply again to med school, then you're going to have to start a graduate degree program and then reapply. Or I was one of 2 students that had retained their pilot qualification through the 4 years. And between my sophomore and junior year, the Air Force also paid for 25 hours of private pilot's license. And so that was my first introduction to flying. I never dreamed of flying. I wasn't the kid that looked up in the sky and went, ooh, like this, that could be me. I just didn't even think of flying. But that introduction, that 25 hours of general aviation pilot training like this, I went, wow, I really like this. I mean, this is really fun. So when they came back and said, hey, listen, we'll send you to pilot training right now. Actually, it wasn't even right now. It was in 1 year. I mean, there was a backlog in training at the time. So we'll send you to pilot training, or you could go to grad school and reapply. And so I actually said, well, you know what? I could always reapply to med school somewhere down the road, but I'm going to take this bird in the hand because, I mean, again, I could reapply to med school and still get the Dear John letter, that says, hey, not this time. And so I did. I went to pilot training. So I went to pilot training in I guess it would be 78, late 70. I was in class 7905, meant that I graduated in 1979, the fifth month. So May of 1979, I graduated from pilot training. And that started my career, kind of an aviation path career in the Air Force.
Yeah, it's fascinating to hear how you got from healthcare aspirations into aviation. I did not know that story. I had assumed you were that kid that, watched the planes. And were like...
In fact, it's amazing because my classmate of mine at pilot training went on to med school later. I mean, he had actually graduated, flew F4s, resigned his commission, and went back to Uniformed Services Health Science Center and got his medical degree. And we were very close. And so, we kept in touch with each other. I had gotten married in 1980, and my wife ended up having a surgery at Walter Reed Army Medical Center in Washington, D.C. And we were up there for an extended period of time, not that it was that dire, whatever, but they wanted to use her. I mean, it's a training environment. And so they wanted to use her case specifically. And her attending physician wanted to take her case to some annual conference that they were doing. It had to do with ophthalmology. And they wanted to take her case. So we were up there for, 42 days or something like this. And I was, quote, a non-medical attendant, I guess, so with her. But I got the fever again, to apply to med school. And even though my career was progressing really well at the time, but then as I did some research, and it said, well, you're going to have to take the MCAT again, which is not an easy test. And if you want to be good at the MCAT, I'll probably have to go and audit courses. I'd probably go have to audit organic chemistry and audit, calculus. And I go, you know what? I guess my heart's really not that in it, because I just didn't, I wanted it, but not that bad like this, to go back and audit those really hard courses that you took at the normal university level. So I continued with my aviation career.
Wow. Can you tell us how you got, how kind of flying with the Thunderbirds came to be? How did you get into that lane of it?
Well, so, one of the, you had asked me earlier too, how did you even see the military and look at the I mean, how did the military, come up like this? And I go, it's kind of funny too. My father was, have you heard of Elks Clubs before, like this?
Yes.
So my father was a member of an Elks Club, and they were just, a bunch of, I would call it good old boys. It was really nepotism on steroids. I mean, everybody was helping everybody's son and daughter and whatever. And my dad actually got me a really good job right out of high school. And I was working for White Freightliner. There's a truck manufacturing plant on Sobeys Island, just on the it'd be the Willamette River, I guess, on the Willamette River, just in a Portland area like this. And it was a factory job like this. And I was, quote, hanging axles. So, the truck frame would come through and they'd have a stenciled number on it. And I'd look at the production sheet and it said it needed this axle. And I'd go over to these bays and I'd pull out the axle, and I'd, with a lift, I'd bring it over to the end of the frame and bolt it onto the frame, and it'd go down the line. And that was one of the things where I go, well, I can't do this the rest of my life. This is real monotonous like this. and that's why, again, the military became very appealing to me. I remember I told you my uncle really appeared to me. But in that era like this, I mean, there's a lot of hero images. You know, I kind of grew up. I was born in 1954. I think the introduction of TVs and households was like 1954, and so I grew up with the influence of hero shows. You know, like
Yeah.
Sky King and the Lone Ranger and all these, you know, good versus evil kind of people that you had these hero image. And quite frankly, a lot of them were military, right? I mean, the GI Joes, and you'd see all these old movies, you know, war movies where, you know, where all these, you know, soldiers and stuff were heroes, and they did fantastic things. And so you had this image. And so the military, even though I mentioned in 1972, there was a lot of disappointment from society, U.S. society, over the Vietnam War like this, but the military still, to me, was, you know, kind of an environment, or certainly an enterprise that that I knew that I would be happy in and want to do. But then now transitioning to the Thunderbird piece here, I when I mentioned I went to pilot training, right after pilot training, I was assigned, it's called FAIP, FAIP, meant First Assignment Instructor Pilot. So I was rolled right back into pilot training as an instructor. So I went through T-37 training, which is the first jet trainer that you train in. And then the advanced jet trainer is the T-38. And then I did well in the program. And so I was brought right back to be the instructor out of the plane that I just got out of as a student like this. And so I came back as a first assignment instructor pilot in the T-38, the advanced jet trainer. And I did that. And I was really disappointed, to be honest with you. They had what they call the dream sheet. And so at the end of pilot training, you fill out your dream sheet and you tell them, whoever them is, like this is what I'd like to do. And I was really interested in going into fighters. So I had actually in 1979, when I graduated, some of the fighters that we know of today were just coming out, like the F-15 and the F-16. These were brand new planes into the Air Force inventory, and the A-10. And so my class, we already knew my class was going to get an F-15, and I thought, oh man, I should be the guy, right? I mean, so I put down, you know, so I had all these fighters down, and then they had a block in there that said first assignment instructor pilot, yes, no, or undecided. And I put no. I mean, I didn't want to come back as an instructor pilot. I wanted to go operational. I mean, I wanted to go operate, not in a standard training environment, go operational. And then during assignment night, which is kind of a fun night, you know, you're all sitting around, and it's kind of like, you know, going to Las Vegas, you know, they're rolling the, you know, the kind of the bingo machine or whatever it was, and out comes your assignment. It's on a big screen or whatever it is. But, you know, I don't know, when my assignment got announced, you know, it's a big T-38, and I go, and I was, oh man, I'm coming back as a first assignment instructor pilot. And that was the first time where, and I'll share some more disappointments, where you don't realize that disappointments actually open doors and become opportunities. So I'm a first instructor assignment pilot, and I served in that position for nearly 3 years. But after 3 years, I had, I think, something like 1,400 hours, 1,400 flying hours, all first pilot, all instructor time. And so that means highly experienced. And so in 3 years, I become highly experienced. If I had gone into like the F-15 or the F-16, and at that time, they were building out brand new cadre into those platforms. And they were mostly senior officers, right? So they're mostly major and lieutenant colonels. And so if you come in there as a lieutenant, you're going to be the snack bar officer, you know, for about two years. I mean, you're not going to have the opportunities to upgrade because you have, you know, it's just an over influence of senior individuals, and they're going to take the priority like this. And so I didn't recognize that, even being disappointed in getting the FAPE, what an opportunity it was, because now I leave and I get my very first operational assignment, and it's an A-10. And oh, by the way, disappointed again. I go, A-10. I mean, that's really kind of not a fighter, but yeah, maybe it is. But it's not an F-16. It's not the F-15, but okay, I guess I'm going to go do the A-10. And I remember showing up at my very first operational squadron, and it was RAF Bentwaters in the United Kingdom. And my squadron commander was a guy named Lieutenant Dwight Kealoha. And he did his interview, kind of like a, introductory interview, and asked me questions like this. And I remember him saying like this, he goes, well, Dana, this is going to be great for you. So you're coming to us, having served 3 years as an instructor pilot G-38. You have about 1,400 hours. So I can see some pretty rapid upgrades for you. I can see you being a 2-ship flight lead, a 4-ship flight lead, an instructor pilot, and a flight commander pretty fast, and it really occurred that way. It was probably within a 2-year time span. I had progressed through all of that, and was a 4-ship flight lead, mission commander, flight commander. It just kind of just happened that way, very, very fast like this. And so again, I'm going, wow, I'm kind of disappointed here like this. I got the A-10, but the reality is I got to do more than others at the same, I would call it, rank and experience level, have gone into a different weapon system. So that was good. But while I was flying the A-10 at Bentwaters, the Air Force Thunderbirds did a European tour. And so at that time, I was the A-10 demonstration pilot as well. And I'll go back and tell you how that happened as well. But I was the A-10 demonstration pilot. So the wing leadership looked to me to be the project officer for one of the Thunderbirds, because I knew about the air show and the things that go along with the air show. And so I just remember coming home after seeing the air show and the Thunderbirds fly, and I told my wife, I go, honey, I want to do that. I want to be a Thunderbird like this. And I would jokingly, I'd sit at the the dining room table and I'd write my signature out because they sign autographs all the time. I go, hey, how's this look? Does this look like it would be a good autograph? Like this, I mean, you could read it. And but anyway, so I had gone back. Maybe a year later after the Thunderbirds, and I was now in a position that I actually could apply to the Thunderbirds. You had to have a certain amount of experience level, you had to, flight time and experience level, et cetera, et cetera. But I met all the criteria. And what I do remember is all my friends saying, oh, Dana, you can't do this. I mean, you can't compete. You fly in the A-10. They fly the F-16. You wouldn't even be competitive in this role. And so I made the application and I went all the way through the finals. I was, you go in there as they call them appies, but I went in there as an applicant, and you were generally an applicant selected. And then you went through another process called finals, where you go back again. And it was downsized to just a smaller group. And then they were going to pick at the time, they're only going to pick 2 pilots, to be on the Thunder. That's traditionally what happens. It's they pick 2 at a time. Anyway, so I had gone through the whole process. I was a finalist, but then not selected. And I remember coming back to my squadron, and finding out that I wasn't selected to be on the Thunderbirds. And then I got the, see, we told you, you couldn't, whatever. But then the following year I go, well, I'm going to do this again. I mean, somebody else is going to have to tell me no, not the guys that I'm flying with. First of all, they're not in a position to make that selection like this. And so I applied again. And the second time that I applied, I actually got accepted to be a Thunderbird. And I do remember, again, and I use this today too, is I go, hey, don't let anybody distract you from your dreams, your goals, your dreams, or whatever like this, particularly people that aren't in a position, to basically influence that selection at all. I mean, they're just outside observers, and, the naysayers are always going to be naysayers. And so try to navigate away from that as much as you possibly can. But during the process too, the second year that I applied, and I was a finalist the second year, I learned something about myself, and that was that I was a bit overly confident and a bit probably arrogant, right? Arrogant. So there was a process where they have you do like a narration. Even though I wanted to be a demo pilot, one of the positions that they hire is a narrator like this. He's a qualified pilot, and he actually ends up being the advanced pilot. So he always goes to the show sites ahead, gets everything set up, and works with the organizers. But so they make you do a mock narration like this, and you have it's like a little flimsy, right? And you fill in the blanks. Hi, I'm Dana Atkins from Portland, Oregon. And you you read this thing, and I actually read it, I just, I did it
Mhm.
cocky. I did it really
Mhm.
cocky. And
Mhm.
so when it was all over, the commander leader of the team came up to me and goes, Dana, why'd you do that? And I said, I don't know. It's kind of like, somebody just jumped on my shoulder and, I did it. And so I had gone back and he goes, I don't know what to tell you like this. I mean, we're really high on you. And now these things actually go to the 4-star general, at Tactical Air Command, who's going to review these things. And I go, he's going to see this is kind of go, no way, like this, And so I flew all the way back. I was in Europe. I was in Ramstein, Germany at the time. And I flew all the way back from Las Vegas, and I was just kind of despondent. I go, why did I do that? Why did I do that? But for whatever reason, I got selected. I still got selected like this. But I just remember, and the guy that actually ended up training me was David Robinson. He had been the left wingman, and then he actually moved to the slot pilot. And he told me, he goes, when we all got together at the table and there's like 12 officers and we had to give, our kind of vote on, do we select this person or not select it? He goes, hey, I gave you this vote. I thought you were arrogant. I thought you were, overly confident. I didn't think you were a real good fit for the team because of that. But again, somehow, I got selected, but I learned from that a lot. I learned about, whoa, you just need to kind of like live within yourself and stop this, and luckily I did, right? So, but it was a kind of hard way to go. But anyway, so yeah, so then I get on the Thunderbirds and I had the opportunity, and as an officer, it's a 2-year tour like this. Enlisted could actually get extended tours, with the commander's approval, but 2 years, and it was demanding at the time. I was very fortunate to have a very supportive family.
Mhm.
My wife and we had 2 children at the time, my son and then my daughter as well. And they were, I think my son at the time when it was like maybe in kindergarten, and my daughter was, she's 3 years younger than her brother, so she was 3 years younger than kindergarten, but you're on the road for about 220 days a year. So you take a calendar year, 365 days, and 2/3 of that, you're not even at home anymore like this. So you try to build your life around as much as you can, integrating your family. So, my family would travel, I'd say within maybe about a 500-mile radius from Las Vegas, which Nellis Air Force Base was our home station, and they would meet me at the air show. So we would just be together as a family at the air shows. I jokingly say my kids saw so many air shows that once I wasn't flying air shows, actually I had a assignment. It was PME, it was Armed Forces Staff College, and it was either the Blue Angels or the Thunderbirds were going to fly at Naval Norfolk, and we got up in the morning because that Armed Forces Staff College was in fact at Norfolk, and got up in the morning and said, "Hey kids, let's go to the air show today." And my kids go, "Oh no, Dad, not another air show like this." So I mean, they got more than their fair share of watching air shows, but again, a very rewarding assignment. And I mean, you're going to ask me questions too, probably about what were some of the highlights of your career. The Thunderbirds were definitely. I mean, it was. I mean, first of all, you don't recognize at first how much you can influence somebody like this just by a role model, by a positive role model. I had the opportunity to go back later in my career. I was a 1-star select at the time, and I went back for F-16 requalification, and I went to a Wright-Patterson. There's actually a guard unit in Springfield, Illinois, right outside of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and it was a F-16 guard unit, and that's where I did my requal. And the head of the Illinois Guard at the time was a Brigadier General. His call sign was AJ. His last name was Foyt, so they called him AJ Foyt, like the race car driver.
Yeah.
And anyway, I'd come into the squadron building, and the operations officer said, "Hey, sir, General Foyt wants to come in to meet you, but wants to be able to take you out to lunch. Are you okay for that?" And I go, "Yeah." And I thought it was purely protocol, that, hey, he's the adjutant general of the state of Illinois, and he's just being respectful. And I was a 1-star select, and he was going to take me out to lunch. And anyway, so we go to lunch. I'm in my flight suit. He's in a sports jacket. He has just a normal civilian sports jacket on. And so we go to some restaurant right outside the gate of the base. And we're sitting there talking, and he reaches inside of his sport coat and he pulls out an envelope and tosses it in front of me and goes, "Take a look at that." And I open up this envelope, and it's a Polaroid picture. Do you remember the old Polaroid picture?
Yes.
Yes. There's a Polaroid picture, and it was me in my Thunderbird flight suit and a young kid like this. And I had kind of had my arm around him, and we're taking a picture like this. He goes, "Do you know who that is?" And I said, "Well, I know who the one person is." I go, "That's me." But no, the young man there. And he goes, "No, that's my son." I go, "Oh." He goes, "Yeah, you guys were doing an air show, and I forget, it was like upstate Michigan or something like this." And he goes, "Yeah." And I took my son to the air show, and my son was so excited about seeing and meeting the Thunderbirds that he stood outside of your briefing room, like in a hallway. And when the briefing was all done, the door opened and all the pilots, marshaled out. And every one of them, and he's just, quiet and polite and, somewhat shy. And he's got his little, brochure that he wants the pilots to sign. And they all walked by him. They just all walked by him. And then you came out and you stopped and you started talking to him. You put your arm around him, you sign it, whatever. I mean, he goes, up until that moment, my son was, my wife and I were having some problems. I mean, he just didn't have any direction. He didn't have any motivation, whatever it was. But that one meeting with you like this, all of a sudden it just turned his life around. And he got really good. He got good at school. He got good grades. He went to school. He's got an Air Force commission now. He's flying AC-130 gunships. And I just came here to tell you, from his mother and me, we just want to thank you so much for any. But again, during that moment, I didn't recognize that, right? I mean, this is like, 10, 15 years later or something like this. And then all of a sudden it comes back to you like this about how something is seemingly small had such dramatic input. And again, that happens in life, right? It happens in life when somebody does something that, again, is seemingly small, but has tremendous impact on an individual. So
yeah, and that's such a great example. I think people, well, all the other pilots just walked past the kid, and what a difference you made, not only his life, but also his career and his service to our nation. And, and you don't even necessarily remember those few moments, but what an impact. So I know, so can you walk us through, so after the Thunderbirds, can you tell us a little bit more about kind of some highlights in your military career, in command, or some of the kind of those key moments that shaped your service?
Yeah, some of this is going to get a little dark now because, unfortunately, service in the military is a high risk, profession, and with that, comes some scenarios where sometimes you don't even want to relive them like this. But I mentioned before already that so after the Thunderbirds, I actually went to PME. That's when I went to Armed Forces Staff College, and then I had a staff tour with Tactical Air Command at Langley. But then from there, I was the first commander, fighter squadron commander. It was the 74th Fighter Squadron, and that's the one that got stationed at Pope Air Force Base. And the Air Force had come up with a concept. It was kind of an employment concept called composite wing. So you would have fighters alongside of like airlift, in this case, C-130s. And so the fighters would provide escort into a hostile area. The C-130s, in this case, were bringing in paratroopers, Army paratroopers. So you'd sanitize the area with your fighters. The guys would jump in and do their mission role. And that's kind of how it worked. Again, we had this unfortunate accident, on March 23rd, 1994. Again, 23 soldiers killed in a cantonment area waiting to get on a plane. And that, again, that's a moment that you just, you don't want to relive. In fact, in some cases you do relive. I just remember, several years ago, I got put together with a golfing group. These are mostly West Point grads in Washington, D.C. I was a member of Army Navy Country Club, and I got with this, they call them the misfits like this. And so I got, thrown in with the misfits. It was a good throw in. I mean, they were great guys. I mean, people like John Campbell, General John Campbell, and Halverson. And I mean, just names that just resonate, certainly in Army circles. But so I'm talking about something like this, and the one guy who was in my golf group, he looked at me and he goes, "I was a lieutenant colonel then. I was in that cantonment area. I mean, I was actually responding, trying to help, soldiers who were, obviously killed and whatever it was like this." I mean, he goes, "God, it was horrific. I just can't tell you. I mean, I still has it in his memory about that, but that again, and then, trying to, kind of to reinvigorate the squadron, because the squadron was down too. I mean, they took it, certainly on the chest there. And then I had subsequently, later down the road, I went on to be a wing commander at the 21st, or excuse me, the 20th Fighter Wing at Shaw Air Force Base in South Carolina. And we actually had the East Coast F-16 demo pilot. And so as the wing commander, I was supposed to qualify and sign off the demo pilot before he went out and did air shows. And our demo pilot was Major Bryson Phillips. And so I was gonna, I would monitor from the ground all of his training flights, but on the last one, I was gonna fly with him. So we had the 2-seat F-16. So I was in the back seat. And so he flew his entire profile, and he did really well. And during the debrief, I just was talking to him about flying air shows and what a privilege it was, but also, certainly what a responsibility it was. And that I hope that he was going to have as much enjoyment doing this as I did, for instance, when I had the opportunity to fly for the Thunderbirds. And when I flew for the Thunderbirds, they gave us these really nice buckskin gloves. They're real soft, deer buckskin. And they were just really nice gloves. And so I had a brand new pair of these buckskin gloves from the Thunderbirds. And so at the end of the debrief, I gave him those gloves. I go, "Hey, Bryson, these are the gloves that I had when I was on the Thunderbirds, and I hope you enjoy these." And they kind of bring back the same kind of memories as I have. So his very first air show was in Kingsville Naval Air Station, just outside of Houston, Texas. And it was a Saturday air show. I was home at Shaw Air Force Base at the time. And some time, I get this phone call, and I answered it. And I said, I'm a colonel at the time. I said, "Colonel Atkins." And this voice was kind of, a pant like this. He goes, Sir, Bryson just crashed." I said, "What?" He goes, "He just crashed. And there's no way he's alive, sir. It was horrific." And I go, "Oh my God," like this, and that ended up, my wife and I, had to go to Bryson's home, Shannon Phillips. They had a brand new baby. I think the baby was 4 months old, and I showed up to the door. It's the one that it's a scenario that you don't want to see, where you see somebody in their dress blues, you see a chaplain, we had a doctor, my wife, and I think there was another spouse with us too, like this. And we knock on the door, and Shannon had come to the door. They had a glass weather door there, and she stood behind the door. And then all of a sudden, she's holding the baby, and all of a sudden, you could see her just start to shake like this because she knew, something was wrong like this. But Bryson had done a maneuver and lost control of the airplane and crashed and killed himself. And even to this day, Bryson's parents, his father's passed away, but his mom, Lee, I call her mom, and even to this day, I still stay in contact with her. I mean, she needed that, and I probably needed it as well. In fact, I just got done emailing her probably 4 or 5 days ago, and she said, in a return email to me, something like, because this happened in year 2000. So she said, "Just think about this, almost 25 years ago. I mean, you told me that you would be here for me. And 25 years, you're still here. You're living up to your promise like this." And yeah, it's actually an easy thing to do like this, to promise somebody like that. But anyway, so that that kind of sets up again, what do you do? How do you do this? Because again, something like that. And Bryson was a really popular individual. I mean, throughout the entire wing, and so that just kind of cascades, and you kind of have this black cloud, that's over the organization, and you have to figure out how to navigate out of that and bring people back up on the step and feel good about themselves and about what they're doing. And then up in Alaska as the 11th Air Force commander, we had a C-17 demo team, and I was flying aggressors. I was flying aggressors, F-16 aggressors, up at Eielson. And at that time, I had a aide de camp, and my aide de camp came to me and said, "Hey, General Atkins," he goes, "the wing commander wants you to sign off on the training records for the C-17 demo pilot. You have to sign that off to get them to race to do air shows." And I go, "Oh, okay. Well, let me ask you a few questions here." And I'm asking this to an aide de camp, right, who probably doesn't know the answers anyway. But I asked these questions. I said, has the operations group commander or the wing commander, have they monitored the training, the training program for this crew? And he goes, "Well, sir, I don't know." I go, "You need to get back to him and ask him that question." I go, "And then what's the experience level of these crews like this?" I go, "You got a pilot, you got a co-pilot, you got a flight engineer. I mean, are they highly experienced? Are they just experienced? Are they, did they just show up at the whatever it is? I just need to know that." And so anyway, all the answers came back, no, 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 and I don't know. And I go, "Well, I'm not signing off on this." I go, "So here's the thing. You tell the wing commander that either he or the ops group commander needs to get on that plane and fly with those guys to literally, monitor their profile while they're actually flying the profile. I want to see their training syllabus. I want to see their qualifications. I want to see the programs they got through, what sign-offs they've had as far as proficiency goes, et cetera. And I want you to videotape the air show, the performance, the videotape, so that we could sit down together, all of us, and we can critique this show. You can, hey, yeah, you got the nose up here, you did this, That's exactly the way we did it in the Thunderbirds. Everything was videotaped. Everything was critiqued. You get into the briefing room, you'd actually have still, hold still photos to make sure everything was, it was, again, it was highly disciplined, and it had to be, right? So anyway, I gave that direction. And so I had come back from Eielson, and actually I was on a C-12. You probably know the King Air, the C-12. I flew back on a C-12. I was a passenger like this. But anyway, we land on the runway, and as we land on the runway, I see this C-17, right, called the Hammerhead, sitting right in the Hammerhead, ready to take the runway. So we cleared the runway. I get off the C-12. I get in my vehicle, which was right out there on the flight line, and I drove home. I was late in the afternoon, So I drove home. I probably home, I don't know, 30 minutes or whatever it is, and I get a phone call, and it's my aide de camp. Sir, I think a C-17 just crashed. I saw it go over the horizon like this, and there's just this big black smoke just, tumbling up in the air. And yes, indeed. And that was that C-17 that I told them for the wing commander, everybody to monitor. Now, the part of this, the wing commander or the ops commander wasn't on that plane because they had F-22s at Elmendorf, and a couple of the F-22s had to divert over to Anchorage Air Force, Anchorage, the public field at Anchorage International. And it was a high classified airframe, so they had to go over and kind of secure the airframe. So they had to have some presence over there. So they weren't on that plane, but it was filmed. So they did everything else. So this is probably one of the most elaborate investigations because it's all on film, so, a lot of times they'll run simulations and they'll take the flight data recorders and try to, reconstruct the flight. They didn't have to reconstruct this flight at all because it was all there. They had flight data recorders too, but they could overlay everything. And so you saw where the plane took off and then just really over, and then the stall horns, beep, 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 and the co-pilot, who we know very well as well. Laura still stays in in touch with his wife, but he's going, pull out, pull out, pull out, and they just flew it right in the ground like this. And so that was a real, kind of tough one as well too. And then the part, and you've heard me share this story before too, but my executive officer at the time at 11th Air Force was Major David Brodeur. And David Brodeur was, when I was flying with aggressors up at Eielson, he was my assigned instructor pilot. I mean, I jokingly always say they don't want general officers flying by themselves anymore. I mean, they don't think you could find your way home. So we had these, what they call seeing IIPs, we jokingly said. So he would always be in the formation. I mean, I flew single ship like this. I mean, it's just one person in the cockpit. But anyway, but he would be in the formation somewhere. So, if you're having some problems, you just get on the radio and go, hey, what do you want me to do here? Or what should I do here? But I, over the time that he was my, kind of seeing eye instructor pilot, I grew very close to him. I mean, first of all, I saw him as a remarkably talented Air Force officer, a talented pilot. I got to meet his family. He was just a wonderful husband and father, and everything was good about him. And that's why at the time when I needed a new executive officer at 11th Air Force, which is now going from Eielson to Anchorage, or Fairbanks to Anchorage, I asked him, hey, would you consider coming down and being my executive officer? Because I thought I was in a position to help accelerate his career. If he continued to do, the good work that I know he was capable of and had certainly displayed up to that point. But that's a big decision. I mean, first of all, I always tell everybody, 1 year assignment in Alaska is like 7 dog years. I mean, it's a tough environment like this. And so, but after he discussed it with his family, he said, yeah, I'll take the assignment. So he had come down to Anchorage and at Elmendorf and became my executive officer. And he wasn't in that role, more than say 3 months. And he came in one day and he has a piece of paper in his hand. He goes, hey boss, I just got deployment orders to Afghanistan. And I go, you what? He goes, I just got deployment orders to Afghanistan. I go, well, that doesn't make sense. You just showed up here. I go, I bet you and Susie still got boxes done packed, don't you? And he goes, oh yeah, like this. I go, well, I'm going to turn that off. I go, not because I'm a general officer, because when I talk to your assignment officer like this, that makes no sense. That you just got here 90 days later, they want to deploy you to Afghanistan. I go, you're going to have to deploy somewhere down the road, but not now. And he goes, well, before you do that, why don't you allow me to go home and I'll talk this over with Susie and the kids and see what they say. And so the next day he came in and he had a smile on his face. He's jovial like he always is, just upbeat. He just was a good person, just always positive. And he said, hey boss, don't make that call. I'll go ahead and take that assignment. I go, you're going to take the deployment? And he goes, yeah. I go, well, why, what makes you say that? Why did you decide that? He goes, well, because if I don't do that, some other father has to. And I just sat back and go, yeah, this is who you are. I mean, it just underscored, that he's thought bigger than himself like this. If I'm not going to do that, then some other person's going to be penalized. And I'm going to take it like this. And so he did take that assignment. And then on April 27th of 2011, I was in Hawaii at Hickam Air Force Base at a conference, a commander's conference with the PACAF commander at the time. I was in my queue room at the time and visiting officers' quarters room at the time, and the phone rang. It was like 2:00 in the morning, and I answered the phone, and the individual said, "Hey, this is the operations director at the Pacific Air Force's Operations Center. Sir, am I talking to General Atkins?" I go, "Yeah, it's General Atkins." He goes, "Sir, I just have to pass some news to you. I'm really sorry, but your executive officer, Major David Brodeur, was just killed in Kabul." Yeah, I go, "What?" And he was one, and I can't remember, 10, one of 10 individuals where kind of a rogue Afghan colonel had gone into an operations center and just summarily just opened fire on everybody and killed about 10 people in there. And David was one of those. And so I kind of didn't know how to deal with it. Even my wife had to go in my absence, go to Susie and tell Susie, she had just lost her husband, her best friend, and father of her kids, and all that kind of stuff. But farther down the line, you know, like this, when it came time for me I was basically, Military Officers Association had reached out to me. I'd been 4 years in the private sector, kind of in a profit loss arrangement, working as a president CEO of a media company. And they reached out to me and said, hey, we'd be interested in having you apply for this job. And I mean, why me? And where did that come from, like this? And I mean, I found out later down the road, but what interested them, I mean, again, was the profit and loss experience. MOAA, as you know, is a nonprofit. And people kind of, you know, when you say the word nonprofit, you interpret nonprofit as, well, you don't make any money like this. Well, it's nonprofit as far as what the IRS sees as a tax exempt organization. So they're a 501c19, meaning that they're basically established to support veterans and their families. You know, 75% of their membership has to be veterans. Anyway, they reached out to me, and I thought, well, yeah, you know, I went home and talked to my wife, and I go, honey, you know what? And I was a MOAA member. I was a MOAA life member, even at the time. I go, but you know what MOAA does? I go, one of the things that MOAA is doing right now, and they're working real aggressively, and they've been doing this for a decade, is this thing called SBPDIC, called the widow's tax. And I go, and I had told Susie, when David deployed, I had told Susie that, hey, well, David's away, we're going to take care of you like this. And I didn't realize then, you know, that promise was going to be a life enduring promise. I mean, I certainly have no qualms with that at all, but I didn't realize it was going to be like that. But anyway, so Susie, I said, Susie's encumbered by this. I mean, she's, you know, she gets the $1-for-$1 decrement off of her survivor benefit plan. And maybe in my role here as the president of MOAA, I could be part of, you know, whatever that advocacy effort is to get that repealed. And as you know, too, and you're very familiar with that, that we did get that repealed. There's still more work to do, but that was kind of a motivation, you know, to kind of like, you know, leave the private sector, and in this case, the president CEO of the media company. And I mean, you know, I always tell everybody, I go, it was a great job, right? I go, they brought me in there for, you know, to kind of be a change agent, right? Well, it really wasn't working out because, I mean, the owner, you know, it's kind of a family owned business like this. He wasn't really necessarily interested in changing anything like that. He was, you know, I mean, he's a wonderful man. I don't want to say anything bad like this, but status quo was good enough for him. I mean, he just had been in the industry for so long, even though he recognized that it needed to change. But it wasn't going to be under his watch, I don't think, like this. And so I just kind of went, yeah, this probably not the best fit for me right now, because I'm getting frustrated because I kind of bring all these things forward that I think will help him, you know, change the direction of the company like this, and then only to have him, you know, go, nah, I don't think so right now. So anyway, we took the MOAA assignment like this, and I certainly was a great 7 years for me. Yeah. And then I always tell everybody, hey, listen, when I came on, the chairman of the board said, we'd like to have you stay with us for 7 years. I mean, again, based on performance, right? We'd like to have you stay for 7 years. And we really believe that 7 years is about the right time to basically make a change. Not because you aren't effective, you aren't efficient, or whatever like this, but people just bring new vision, new energy, and, you know, and I agree too. And really at the 7 year point, I was starting to sense some, I wouldn't call it lack of motivation, but some disappointment. I mean, again, I just kind of said, yeah, this is a really good time, you know, for me to, you know, to relinquish and let somebody else, you know, kind of run the organization, and they're doing a great job. The person that they brought in after me is doing just a wonderful job too. And so, good call by the chairman of the board there.
Yeah. Well, one thing that always stood out to me about your leadership approach, and then also your advocacy work, was just how it wasn't just bills needing to pass through Congress and budget lines. You knew the people whose lives this impacted, like Susie and her family.
Right.
I remember finding out that even though we had paid into SBP, that in the event of my husband's death, I wouldn't receive anything from that. That was before widow's tax was appealed. And I remember, General Atkins, I just the depth of what a disservice that was. I could not believe that that was the case.
Right.
And then I remember 3 years later, seeing that MOAA got it repealed. And that was just an incredible that specific thing. That was something I felt was just such a disservice. I was preparing for it to affect me, later on. And it really spoke to y'all's passion and dedication, but also kind of the power of advocating, because in just 3 years of me finding out I wouldn't be out, the offset,
Right.
and then finding out that it was repealed was, I had never seen change like that before. And it was really inspiring to see that. And I know that's decades of work and effort of so many people to make that happen. But it really impacts real people's lives. And I think your connection to that, that bill and so many others really made a difference.
Hannah, too, one of, MOA's, kind of slogans is one powerful voice, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's why I always tell everybody, I go, as an independent individual like this, you could go to Congress, you could walk the halls of Congress, and you could knock on doors and get meetings like this, but you're not gonna move the needle one bit like this. But if an organization that's 400,000 strong, or and it doesn't, you don't have to pick MOAA, you could pick any of these. Because there's a lot of organizations out there, particularly those that are supportive of of military members, active duty, retired veterans, families, etc. That are doing some great work out there, and they are moving the needle. Again, I mentioned before, I'd gone in to talk to a particular congresswoman, and the first thing she asked me was, "How big are you?" And I, again, I guess some of that arrogant came out of me, because I go, well, I'm about 5'9", 175. She goes, "Oh, that's not what I mean. That's not what I mean." I knew it. I knew what she meant like this, but I just thought I'd, kind of throwing back at her or something like this. But even, again, the congressional leaders recognize that, hey, if you're coming, that's a lot of votes, right? So if you have a pretty large organization, and you've got good focus and good organization and stuff, you make a big difference like this.
Yeah, and it's not, as y'all know, it's not overnight change. I think right now we're, or my family's very involved with the Richard Starr Act, getting that passed.
Right.
And it doesn't just happen because we write one op-ed or because we meet with one elected official. It is that one voice organized. And I think it's easy to kind of lose sight and kind of lose hope on some of those things, especially when you're looking at, like, with Pill Widows tax. Wasn't like 20 years or even
2 decades.
Yeah. That's a
Well,
lot.
the other thing too is, again, so our Congress is large, right? 500 something strong like this. But only, I think it's now, don't quote me on this one too, I think it's only like 17% of Congress has any military experience at all like this. And so when you're going into those offices, probably your biggest role is to help inform them right there. They're not bad people, to be honest with you. I didn't meet any of them that are bad. Again, they have to weigh things like this. You got somebody who's coming out of a district, congressional district, and they're looking for federal funding, to build a new library or something like this. And so they're trying to, well, man, we might not get our library if we have to do something, move money over here. And that's all, I don't know all the magic behind all this kind of stuff like this. But again, one of the bigger jobs, like in advocacy, is to really, you have to be very knowledgeable in what you're talking about, and then to inform. And that's why I thought, one of the things that MOAA did pretty well is, we bring our members together once a year, where they, it used to be called storming the hill, but we had to go away from that nomenclature after a particular event in Washington, D.C. So now it's called Advocacy in Action. So anyway, you bring all these members in there, and you pick, a series of issues that you want to go and introduce to your congressional leadership. And I think this year it's 5. It's 5 issues that they're taking forward. And so we spend a significant amount of a couple of days just again kind of tutoring the members to get them even more intimate with the issue than just, hey, we're going to go, like one of the issues I think is basic allowance for quarters. It's got decremented over time, but we're trying to get 100% back BAQ versus 95% or whatever it is right now. So trying to inform them so when they do go talk about it, they're not just talking about generalities, that in fact they really have the details. And then, when we did widows tax, the thing that was really compelling is to actually get the widows that were impacted. So you get these widows who came from all across the United States who actually were impacted by that. And they're sitting right in front of the congressional leader and they go, hey, listen, I'm just not talking about this in general terms. It's me. I'm talking to you. I'm in your constituency right here. And I'm the one who basically is being encumbered, by this particular policy provision right now that makes no sense. It never did make sense to, even the congressional leaders, they kind of tilt their head and go, well, that makes no sense like this, Okay, well then why is it when it comes time to voting like this and, you're not getting these things changed like this, but.
And y'all are really bridging the gap there on so much for the veteran community. So I know every journey has its hurdles. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the biggest obstacles you faced in your career and how you overcame them?
Well, I think I've talked to some of those already, about, kind of the mishaps. I mean, I had, again, I didn't have a bad day in the military. I served 35 years. I never had a bad day. I had some days that were better, right? But never really had a bad day. But I mean, the obstacles are really, it's like in anything. I mean, you could be in the private sector, but when it doesn't go as planned, that becomes an obstacle, right? And then you have to kind of redirect and refocus and re-energize and regroup. And how do you do that? I mean, how do you in a leadership position, how do you effectively, kind of help those changes come along? And I've mentioned this before about we're generally of the same ilk, right? What makes you smile and happy makes me smile and happy, and what makes you sad and cry makes me sad and cry. So I've always, again, through the course of my career, tried to just observe, the good things. I've tried to observe what I thought was really good leadership. And then I wouldn't want to necessarily go and imitate that, but I would want to emulate that. And so, I mean, to me, there's a distinction there. I mean, you could see when somebody's faking it like this. And so I try to emulate good leadership and try to do the things that I saw, in my past that were really good. And at the same time, try to distance myself from the things that were demoralizing, either to individuals or demoralizing to organizations. I look back and, the guy that I thought, and it happened to be a guy, it doesn't have to be a guy, but happened to be a guy, the best leader that I ever served under was General Mark Welch. He ended up being the Chief of Staff of the Air Force. I think he's the president of Texas A&M today, in fact. But he's just a wonderful individual. And, people would always ask, well, why did you see him as such a good leader? I go, I know there's just several things that he did, First of all, he always recognized you. I mean, again, something as simple as passing somebody in the hallway and saying, like, for instance, if you and I passed in the hallway and I'd say, hey, Hannah, good morning, how are you? That means a lot. I mean, what really hurts is if I passed you in the hallway and you know that I'm your boss, and I pass you in the hallway and I don't say one thing. I don't make eye contact with you and I don't say one thing. And as our bodies pass like this, I guarantee you the conspiracy theory part of your brain will take over and you'll kind of go, well, what did I do? Well, he's disappointed in me. He doesn't like me. Well, no, I mean, be honest with you, sometimes that person's distracted themselves. They might have been trying to balance their checkbook in the morning and they couldn't make it balance and they're still thinking, what did I do wrong here like this? But the reality is he had his gift where, like I say, he would always acknowledge you. I mean, and that that's powerful, to be honest with you. I mean, even if you walk into a room, you've been there before. If this is a social setting, and the big guy or the big gal walks in like this, and they pass you and they don't even give you an eye contact. I mean, it's harmful like this. And so he was real good about, about acknowledging. The other thing is, he always knew what your contribution was, and I think that's important too. Not to just know that, hey, your name's Hannah or whatever it is, but they knew exactly what you're doing to contribute to the mission, to organizational success, to whatever. They just and he would probably say something about it too, like this, hey Dana, how you doing getting that, whatever ready, for, something like this. But that was good. He gave you honest feedback. I mean, I remember, being called into his office and, um, getting honest feedback. I mean, so he's the type of guy that would, reward in public. You've heard that, reward in public and, criticize in private like this.
Mm-hmm.
But he held to that. I mean, so he would never ever, kind of, embarrass you or something like this in front of your peers and subordinates or whatever like this. But he gave you honest feedback, and it was never hurtful feedback. It's just kind of like, I know you can do better like this. I mean, I remember one time he said to me, "Hey Dana, you're kind of, quick to fire like this. You got to be careful." And he goes, I've this technique that, for instance, if I'm in a briefing and somebody's really, kind of getting to me like this, because, whatever like this, I just start doing something. Basically, it's kind of musculoskeletal, but I take my pen and I try to like roll it across my fingers, without it dropping like this. And so what I do is I automatically distract myself from what's bothering me. So I don't let it intensify. I just, it's just something just to distract myself so I can kind of, I don't do something I don't want to do or whatever it is. But you got to be careful. His comment used to be like, "Hey, just breathe through your nose. Just breathe through your nose like this. You don't have to get all hyper about something real quickly like that." And then the other thing that I liked about him is he made it a point to know more about you like this and your family and what. I mean, it's something simple as about, I mean, so he might know that, you and Jeremy are married, and he might say something about, "Hey, how did you guys meet?" And what, I mean, like this, or he'd ask you questions, something like, "Hey, this is March Madness, who's who you in there, for to win the, the NCAA championship of basketball," or something like this. But he didn't forget either like this. And so somewhere down the line, when you're meeting again casually or something like this, he might say something as, something just like, "Hey, how's Jeremy doing?" And it makes you feel, I mean, he knows me and he's connected, and you just want to do more for somebody who just kind of, I mean, I think he did have a gift, about remembering all that kind of stuff. And some people are better at that, than others. And then the other part is, like I say, he would never publicly, chastise you. And I go back, my Thunderbird days, we had a scenario where the commander leader of the Thunderbirds publicly chastised somebody in front of show audience and the team. And from that point on, and it was about a year and a half longer until they had a change out like this, that he didn't have the respect, of the team, because what he chastised a person was accurate for, but to do it publicly like that, and demoralize this person in front of all of his peers, a show crowd, and all that kind of stuff, basically it was more harming to the commander leader at that time than it certainly was to that individual. So again, kind of seeing those things like this, but anyway, again, the leadership thing. So, back to, whether the hurdles, I mean, again, trying to, the terms resilience, trying to, build up on the resilience as best you possibly can, navigate through those, unfortunate mishaps in this case, or where the plan doesn't, go is not executed as you wanted it to be. Those are the biggest, I think the biggest hurdles.
no, that's very, very insightful. One thing that really stood out kind of as you've shared different aspects of your career is that you're someone that doesn't, you go through very painful experiences, losing service members and seeing this, and you don't avoid the pain in your in life today. It may still hurt, but that you use it to help others. And I think that's really powerful. It makes a real difference on kind of.
You know, I used to share this story, particularly when I was talking to new commanders. And again, I'm going to go back to General Welsh again like this because he had so much impact on me. But one thing he would say a lot, he goes, every airman has a story. You know, you could, if I was in the Army, I'd say every soldier has a story or every sailor has a story like this. And what he meant is you don't necessarily have an excuse.
Right.
Story's not an excuse. It's just that there's something about you that if I'm in a position, you know, to be your supervisor or be your leader, I need to know a little bit more about you like this. And I mean, I'm not saying that I have to open, you know, the private parts of your life. I just need to know a little bit about you. And so I was a colonel under him at that time. But then when I became a wing commander, colonel like this, I mean, so this had happened. You know, I heard every airman has a story like in 1997. So now fast forward, I'm at 2000 and I'm a commander of a wing. My wife and I were invited to a change of command ceremony. And so I had a command vehicle. I mean, they're very distinctive. It was a blue Air Force blue car with a white roof on it. And on the very front of it is a big placard. It was a big eagle like this. And it's a 20th Fighter Wing Commander right on the placard. Well, part of military customs and courtesies is if you see a command vehicle and you're like walking down the sidewalk, you should render a salute to the command vehicle as it passes by. Well, my wife was in the vehicle with me and it wasn't authorized. You know, you could authorize your spouse in a vehicle because we were going to this official setting. And so my wife's in a car with me like this, and I left the headquarters building and kind of went around the corner and came to an intersection with a light on it. And the light was red, and this airman started walking across the intersection, and he just turned and he stared at my vehicle and he just kept walking like this. And I rolled down the window and I said, "Excuse me, can you come over here for a second?" And he walks up to my vehicle, kind of looks in the window and goes, "Yeah, what?" And I said, "Let me ask you something." I go, "Is there anything unique about this vehicle, whatever it is, would cause you to render a particular military custom and courtesy?" And he goes, "Well, I don't know." I said, "Well, go out in front here and then tell me what you saw." And so he comes back and goes, "Yeah, there's a big eagle out there and it says 20th Fighter Wing Commander." And I go, "Yeah, that's me. That's me. And you owe me a salute." And I go, "And I'm not driving around here to be like a salute magnet." I go, "But I am your commander and I have a responsibility to enforce customs and courtesies. So you owe me a salute." And he kind of renders kind of a whatever it was, and he goes on his way. We get to this setting, you know, my wife's with me. We get to this setting where this is change of command ceremony. And the first person that meets us is my vice wing commander. And he goes, "Hey, boss, how's it going today?" I go, his name is Rick. I go, "Rick, not good. I just had this kind of run in with this young airman or whatever it was." And I kind of, you know, shared this scenario. He goes, "I'll take care of this one for you, boss," like this. I goes, "Oh, this kid off this base in 24 hours. I go, "No, I'm not asking that." I go, "It's just, you know, torqued my jaw." And then the next person that kind of confronts me is my command chief, you know, and that's the senior enlisted advisor, you know, that works for the wing commander, you know, so it's an E9, highest enlisted rank. And he asked me the same thing, and I share the same story with him. And he goes, "Well, boss, I'll take care of this one." I go, "Chief, listen, we have like over 5,000 airmen on this installation right here. And it's not your job to make sure every one of them is, you know, saluting the command vehicle when it goes by." I go, because, "Yeah, but it is my job, you know, along with yours, to enforce customs and courtesies, and we'll take care of this." So anyway, um, he said, I'll talk to and I had the guy's name, right? I mean,
Yeah.
he had his name tag on, so I knew who he was and stuff. So, he said, "Oh, I'll talk to his leadership and we'll see what direction we go with this one." And so anyway, the time passes, right? And a couple days later, my executive officer comes in and he's got an envelope and he said, "Sir, some airman came in this morning like this and delivered this envelope and he said he wanted it to go to you like this." And I said, "Oh." So I'm looking at this envelope and its returned address is that name that that I had like this. And I jokingly told the executive officer, I go, "Oh, you open it up like this, I don't need anything to explode here in front of me like this, like this. You open it up." Anyway, so in it is a handwritten letter like this. And so, I was doing something. So I kind of just set it aside on my desk or whatever it is. And then some time passed and I picked up the letter. Then I started to read this letter. And again, I'm just going to make this kind of Reader's Digest version. But, "Dear Colonel Atkins, I'm sorry that you met me the way that you met me for the very first time. This certainly is not the airman that I am, nor the airman I want to be like this. If I could tell you a little bit about myself here, I'm currently working in the mission support group or whatever it was. I'm working in, I forget what, airman records or something like this. This is certainly not what I want to do in the Air Force. When I came in, I wanted to be, I think you wanted to be like in, some form of like art design or something. I forget what it was like this. I wanted to do this. And a little bit more about myself. I grew up in Anacostia, Maryland. I don't know if you know Anacostia, but if you can get out of Anacostia, Maryland, alive, not in jail, not on drugs, whatever, that's some, he goes, my mom was a single parent, me and my brother, raised by my mom, a single parent, me and my brother. And I saw the Air Force and going into the military as kind of at least an avenue out of Anacostia, Maryland, and some way to better my life, on and on and on. So anyway, I read this letter and I go, well, I'm going to make a couple of phone calls here. So the first thing I do is I ask my command section, who's his supervisor? And by that time, I had actually got a package through our Judge Advocate General, a discharge package on that guy. Remember the vice wing commander said, "Hey, we'll have him off the base here in 24 hours." So I got this discharge package, which I hadn't done any action on at all. And so I called his supervisor and I said, "Hey, let me ask you a few questions about, airmen." And I'll hold his name here for a minute, about airmen. And he said, "Yeah, what is it?" I said, "Well, first of all, is he, where's he from?" He goes, "What do you mean? Where's he from?" "Yeah, where's he from? San Francisco, Chicago, Texas, Dallas. Where's he from?" He goes, "I don't know, sir." I go, "Well, let me ask you this question then. How kind of support system does he have? I mean, real strong family background. If he's in trouble or something like that, can he reach back to his family? Does he, what about around here?" He goes, "I don't know, sir," like this. I go, "Well, let me ask you another question. Because you're a supervisor, you would know what he wants to do. What is his dream in the Air Force? What is his dream like this?" And that goes back to what he told me he wanted to do in the Air Force, like this, graphic arts or something like that, like this. And I said, what does he really dream of? What does he want to do?" And he goes, "I don't know, sir." I said, "Okay." I hung up the phone. Then I called his commander, who was a lieutenant colonel. And I kind of went down the same thing. I asked him the same questions. "Hey, let me ask you about airman so-and-so." I go, "Where's he from?" "So what do you mean, where's he from?" "Yeah, where's he from?" Like this, Dallas, Texas, San Francisco,
Yeah.
He goes, "Sir, I don't know." I go, "Okay, what about, what kind of support system does he have like this?" And he goes, the answer was, "I don't know." And I said, "Okay, well, you're his commander." I go, what's he want to do in the Air Force? What motivates him like this?" He goes, "That's right, I don't know." I said, "Well, I do know one thing." I said, "You want him out of your squadron?" I go, "Because I got his discharge package right on my package. I mean, you don't really know anything about him. You just see him as, as a trouble spot in your squadron, and you want him out of your squadron like this." So I hung up the phone. So then I called my command chief back in here. I said, "Hey, get this airman in my office here. I want to talk to him. Just me, you, and him." And so he comes back and like this, and he comes in there and he's kind of shy, and he's a bit, I would call it disheveled a little bit. I mean, he's not groomed real perfect or anything. But he's got his head down like this. And so I start asking him these questions or whatever. And then I said, hey, listen, I'm going to do something here. I'm going to make a contract with you. I'm going to make a verbal contract with you for 60 days. I go, in 60 days, if you haven't changed, I'm going to sign your discharge package. And I said, I've done my signature a lot. I go, probably takes me about 3.7 seconds to do my signature. And in 3.7 seconds, I'm going to change your life. I go, either you're going to, change what you're doing and change your ways like this, or you're going to be a civilian and you can go back to Anacostia, Maryland. I really don't care. Now, I did care. I cared a lot like this, but I just kind of put it out like him. And I said, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm not going to send you back to your duty section because it's kind of like, the Betty Ford thing like this. If you're an alcoholic, I'm not going to send you to a tavern, to basically work on your problem. I go, so your organization already sees you as kind of, as a bad actor like this. So I'm going to put you in another organization and let you go there. And I'm going to marry you up with, I think, a strong NCO. And so we had one identified, a master sergeant. I said, and he's going to be your kind of your battle buddy here for about 60 days. And he's going to be working with you and like this. Anyway, so that occurs. Well, 60 days goes by. And I kind of forgot about all this in a sense of, but my command chief comes in there and he goes, hey boss, 60 days up. And if we have to go check on airmen, and if he hasn't changed like this, you know what you're going to do like this. And I said, okay. He goes, well, let's go over it. And so Friday afternoon, and they have him working in awards and decorations section of some unit like this. And so we walk in there and it's Friday, it's late, and then the commander walks in and everybody's, because they're all ready to go home, the beer lights on and whatever like this. And so, but I go in there and I said, hey, is Airman so-and-so here? Yes, sir. Where's he at? Well, he works back down the hallway here in wards and decks. And I said, okay. And so I walk down there and I walk into this room and he's on the far side of the room with his back to the door and the back to me like this. And I just called out his name. I go, hey, Airman so-and-so. And he turns around really sharp like this. And he's groomed completely different now. Looks really good like this. And he goes, yes, sir. I said, and he's got like something folder in his hand. I go, what are you working on? He goes, sir, we're working on trying to expedite this award decoration or whatever it was like this. Your policy here on the wing is, pin him where you win him like this. And we don't want him to, go on to his next duty station and then, get his award at his next duty station like this. And so we're trying to figure out how to best expedite this. And then I looked at him and it was really, and I said, wow, you've changed. And he smiled and he said, yes, sir. So that kind of was a good setting, whatever it was. And I leave. Now go again, another couple of weeks or whatever it is. And I think my wife and I were actually leaving. We're or a few months ahead, she said. But it was a farewell, kind of gathering for me and my wife. So we're in this gathering, and it's a social environment. And my command chief comes in and said, hey, sir, Airman so-and-so's out in the foyer out there, wants to come in and speak to you. Is that okay? And I go, yeah, sure. And so this kid walks in, right? He's dressed in civilian clothes, but he looks like he's like right off the GQ magazine. I mean, it is like, he's really impressive like this. And he walks in there like this. And he walks up to me and he reaches out his hand and he said, thank you. And then he turned around and left. And my wife and I cried. I mean, I'm getting teary-eyed right now. My wife and I cried. I mean, and it's kind of like, but he had changed so much. But it was because somebody learned a little bit about him, understood, that, hey, he came from a broken family like this, he's working hard or whatever it was. He's not doing what he wants to do. They got to a point where his whole organization didn't care about him at all. And they just, they were happy to just throw him out with the trash like this, rather than kind of just, and that's why I go back to that statement with General Welsh is like, every airman has a story.
Yeah.
I actually got to hear his story via handwritten letter that he sent me like
Yeah.
this, but then I've gone on to do that, you know, more directed than I had.
Mhm.
I literally now try to find out about people because again, if you know, then you may have an opportunity. I mean, for instance, I don't know how many that, I've had some young airmen say, boy, sir, I really like to do what you did. I like to,
Mhm.
go to OTS, or I like to go to college, or I like to whatever. And I said, well, let's see if I can help you like this, and then you kind of find those opportunities. And so, um, huh? Oh, she's telling me another story like this.
Oh.
She goes, well, you had this thing called take an airman to lunch. And I go, yeah. And what I would do is I would literally, on my dime, right, like
Mhm.
this, I would just take an airman and I would ask my command chief to identify an airman for me that I can take to lunch. That I just want to sit there and talk to them in a very casual setting and not threatening to them, and
Yeah.
nothing, no discipline actions going on or anything like that. And oh, by the way, the airmen that you identify, I don't want them to be, the quarterly award winner
Mhm.
or the, whatever, the wings top
Mhm.
NCO. I want them to be just kind of that middle of the road, and then I want to, just kind of talk to them. I learned a lot more about them. I
Mhm.
mean, usually the take a lunch setting was very quiet, not a whole lot of, kind
Mhm.
of one-way conversation. And
Mhm.
finally they just loosen up a little bit. And then all of a sudden, you'd go back and forth and they'd tell you about a lot of stuff. And I had the other one. I would do, I would do wing commander for a day like this. I'd literally take an individual, we have the big conference room and all the
Yeah.
subordinate commanders would be in there. And I'm at the head of the table like this. And I'd bring in a young airman like this. And I put him at the head of the table and I go, you're the commander like this. I go, run this
Wow.
meeting like this. And I would tell them, listen, I go, listen, I'm not smarter than you. Like this, I might have
Yeah.
had more experience and maybe more opportunities and settings like this. But when these individuals at this table give you some information, data like this, I bet the decision that you make is the same one that I would make. I mean, again, once you kind of listen to all this kind of stuff, I mean, at the end of the day, you might say, yeah, you're right. It is red, or yeah, it is blue, or yeah, it shouldn't be like this. And so I would do this uh, commander for a day, because when it's all said and done, particularly when you did policy decisions that weren't, they didn't go across very favorable, in the rank and
Mhm.
file, then that individual is kind of out there, and they're talking to their friends and they go, oh, wait. Here's how that decision was made. It wasn't just because somebody doesn't like, blue t-shirts or whatever it was like this. It's because of this, and that helped a lot too, I think, going down the road here like this, just to help people.
Yeah. Well, you saw them, you may have been the first person to see them for who they are as an individual and then connect them with, opportunities they would never have. I think that belief
Well, I
in
mean, it goes back.
someone.
Remember, I said Lieutenant Palmiero, Bob Palmiero. I mean, that
Yeah.
was a young airman or whatever it is, and he didn't have to spend time with me at all, but he knew what I wanted to do, and I always tell everybody that if you go to work, that's one of the things I liked about the military. I mean, still do. I mean, it's a meritocracy, right? I
Mhm.
mean, you're not, you're going to go in there and somebody's going to see what you do and you're going
Mhm.
to see some career advancement, based on, your work ethic, your
Mhm.
competencies and whatever it is. It's not because you're 6'5" and can jump 40 inches or whatever it is like this. It's because, I mean, and I like that. I mean, and so, somebody who's 5'9" and 175 can get along just as fine with everybody else. But I go back to, how did I become the A-10 demonstration pilot in Europe? Well, it's because at that time, Lieutenant Colonel Kaloa, who was uh, my squadron commander, I was an instructor pilot, flight commander instructor pilot, and one day he called me in his office. He goes, "Hey Dana, tomorrow I want you to fly with the wing commander." I said, "Whoa, fly with the wing commander?" He goes, "Yeah." And I go, "Whoa, is there something special that you want me to do?" And he goes, "Well, no, just give them an overarching, kind of mission profile,
Mhm.
And so I said, okay. So we had these briefing rooms. Now the briefing rooms are pretty high tech, right? They've got computers and videos and, what do you call those, whiteboards and, but anyway, these were just chalkboards, they were
Mhm.
just chalkboards. And so I went in and I decided, I go, okay, well, I'll give them a little bit of what we do. So we're going to take off. We're going to do low level navigation. We're going to go to a gunnery range. We're going to drop bombs. These are all simulated. Drop bombs,
Mhm.
shoot the gun. We're going to got over water range. We had aggressors out of Alconbury. We'll get aggressors. We'll do air to air, and then we'll go back and we'll do some pattern work, and then we'll land. So I had this profile all set up, and I had gone in and I got the briefing room, and I went in there and I actually had rulers so I'd write, mission overview, objectives, but everything was in straight lines like this. I mean, I don't know about you, but it kind of looks sloppy, right? If somebody writes on a chalkboard and it goes downhill, or, they're all scribbly down. So,
Mm.
and then I had colors in there too. So when we were doing, for instance, the gunnery range, air to ground, I was using earth tones, greens and browns, because that's kind of and then when we did the air to air stuff, I was using blue and red. Red being the adversaries and blue being
Mhm.
the good guys. And so, I did all that in blue and red and everything. But anyway, so I go out and I fly this sortie with the wing commanders. It was Colonel Del Tabor. I still remember the name. And so we fly this sortie. I come back. Oh, by the way, I had the day before too. I went and got a brand new flight suit, and they call them cables. When you have like little strings hanging off. So I made sure no cables. It was really, I mean, it was freshly, laundered and pressed.
Mhm.
Had brand new name tags on it like
Mhm.
this. The night before I polished my boots, probably better than I've ever polished before. I even remember my son hanging over my shoulders, watching me polish my boots or whatever, and got a fresh haircut anyway, so I go in and we fly this mission, and then during the debrief, I debrief Colonel Tabor, and I'm complimentary when I should have been complimentary, and I was, being critical, when he had
Mhm.
areas that he needed improvement in, like this. And then we're all done, and he leans back in his chair like this, and he goes, "Hey, Atkins," and I said, "Yes, sir." He goes, "Your briefing boards right now, colored chalk and all that stuff. Don't you think that's a little bit Hollywood?" And I said, "Well, no, sir, I don't." I go, "I did this because I realized you don't fly at the same frequency as I do, or as our line pilots do. So I wanted to make sure your attention was right on the area that I was talking to. When we're doing air to ground, I wanted you to basically be focused on this area that I'm talking about. And we're doing air to air, I wanted you to be focused on that." He goes, "Yeah, well, I like that." I go, "Wow." And so he leaves. I think 30 minutes passes, and my squadron commander calls me down to his office. I go down and report to Lieutenant KLO, and I go, "Look, yes, sir." And he goes, "Hey, what'd you do with Colonel Tabor?" I said, "What do you mean, what did I do with him, sir? I didn't do anything with him." I go, "We finished our debrief and he left the building." "Yeah." "Well, yeah, he called down here. He called down here and he told me that he wanted all his pilots in the wing, his instructor pilots in the wing, to be just like you.
Oh.
He wants you to be the assistant chief of Stan Val, which is a grade way above mine, like this, because those are the guys that, that make everybody standardize and evaluations like this. And he wants you to be the European A-10 demonstration pilot. I mean,
Mhm.
so you have one event, this sortie with the wing commander. You have this one event, and my career snowballed after that. I
Mhm.
mean, it just snowballed. I got an advanced promotion, and then another thing happened, and another thing happened, and another thing happened. It just kind of kept snowballing like this. But I go back and and the way I explain this to everybody, I go, "Hey, listen. So this is the way I interpreted this." And I'm not patting myself on the back or anything like this. I'm just saying that. So Lieutenant Colonel Kealoha called me into his office and told me that he wanted me to fly with the wing commander. I go, "Well, let's just say I'm the worst guy in the squadron. Let's say I'm the
Mhm.
worst pilot, the worst instructor pilot like this. And this is your squadron, you're the commander. is that the person that you'd want to fly with the wing commander? No, no, because you're proud of your squadron. You want, the best, to be displayed like this. And so you're going to get somebody that you have confidence in, that has proven themselves and you have confidence in there. And I go, and that was my opportunity. I go, and I think I was aware enough to recognize that my commander had just given me an opportunity. He opened the door. Now, whether I stepped through that door or didn't step through that door, that was up to me. But I went and got a new flight suit. I went and got a haircut. I polished my boots. I did my briefing room. I mean, I knew that I was given an opportunity to basically show my stuff, I guess. So I always tell everybody, I go, listen, your commanders are looking for that. I mean, they're looking for somebody, to give these opportunities to like this. And they're not going to give it to, the person who's, who hasn't performed or is not performing. I mean, because they're proud of their unit, just like you should be proud of it like this. Anyway, I don't know if it makes sense or not, but.
It's a great example of how kind of the small stuff, or what we may consider small stuff, can really make a difference. And how, so conscientious and thoughtful on, the boots and the flight suit and the chalkboard can really, really cover a lot of ground. I love the door analogy.
It's funny because as I went in my career, I'd be a general officer and I'm flying, with people, I'd be in their squadron, I'd, be in the briefing room, and, the guy who's leading the mission would come in and, come in either 5 minutes late and have a cup of coffee and, flight suit unzipped and sloppy looking. And then you start writing on the board, mission overview. I mean, wasn't prepared at all. Just I'm kind of going, wow. I go, it's just a different mentality. I mean, and then people then wonder why. They wonder why they missed an opportunity, or they didn't. I mean, I don't mean this to be, kind of like, that you have to have all this presence all the time. But, I used to jokingly, when I was a squadron commander like this, we had these designated parking spots like this. And somebody goes, how do I get one of these designated parking spots? I go, come to work early. I mean, come to work early. I mean, it's pretty easy like this. If you want one of those things, just, but if you want to, go by Starbucks and go by Wendy's on the way in and show up at 10 o'clock or whatever it is, and the parking lot's full or whatever, it's like this, don't blame me like this. I mean, it's there if you want it like this. And then I used to say, come early, stay late. And I didn't mean that in a bad way, but I had one boss one time, somebody, one time in a mass meeting or whatever it was, organizational meeting, says, well, boss, what are our duty hours? He goes, well, our duty hours, we support the commander like this. So if the commander's here at work himself, then we should be here. He should be able to pick up the phone and ask somebody in the organization if he's got a question, a unit needs help with something like this. He shouldn't just get like a voicemail like this. So here's your duty hours. Your duty hours, if the commander's here, you're here. If he's not, go home. That's to me. And I kind of get that, I just, you don't have to be a workaholic. You don't have to, just as, just don't have to just be there all the time or whatever. It's like this, but a lot of people, I think they just see it a little differently sometimes, and then realize why they haven't been given the opportunities, or why, why their advancements. I mean, we had this thing in the Air Force one time, that people decided that, some pilots, all they want to do is fly. Okay, well, then fly. But recognize this, probably the highest you'll ever go in your career is either 04, maybe 05, probably 04. If you want to fly, just fly till 20 years. We don't care like this. But if you're going to advance like this, then we have to get you different exposures like this. You have to do these staff tours. You're going to have to go to professional military education. You're going to, again, so don't come crying at the end of the day and like this, go, oh man, I didn't get promoted this time. I got passed over or whatever it is. Well, you're writing your own script, right? So that's, it goes back to that thing. It's a meritocracy. And for some reason that appealed to me then, it still appeals to me.
That's great advice. So I know there's been a lot of discussion kind of in the defense community about the impacts of women serving in the military. And I know your career as a fighter pilot, you saw the integration of women into military aviation and had the opportunity to work with women in this capacity. Can you
Right.
share your insights into that experience and then kind of the current conversation related to women
Right.
in the military? Kind of share your
Yeah.
thoughts with that.
Well, so I think, don't quote me, the the Air Force, I think, made a decision back like in 1975. I think General Jones, Davy Jones, was the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, allowing women to go to pilot training and become military aviators. The first class was pretty small. I think, 9 or 10 individuals. But I was an instructor pilot in late 1979, early 1980, and I had an assigned female student pilot was assigned to me. And so, and this is in T-38s, and so during the course of training like this, and she was very good. She was good and a good student, a good pilot, and progressing really well. And one time we were debriefing, and after the debriefing, whatever it is, I just kind of said, "So, what do you want to do? What kind of plane do you want to fly?" And I'm thinking, because most women were they were going to non-combat roles. I mean, that was kind of the policy then. You wouldn't go into a combat, rated aircraft. So it wouldn't be fighters. You'd probably be mostly in transport like this, And so, and she goes, "I really want to be a fighter pilot." I go, "What?" She goes, "Yeah, I really want to be a fighter pilot." I go, "I don't know if that's a good idea like this." She goes, "Why do you say that?" I go, "Well, well, let's just say me and you. Me and you are flying together out there, and we get into an engagement and we split and we're both fighting for our lives and whatever. And all of a sudden, on the radio, you are having some problems, and you're not winning your fight. Well, I might break off my fight and go over and help you." I go, "That's kind of in my DNA, right?" I mean, I grew up with a father who opened up the door for my mom, and just this kind of the chivalry kind of thing. And I go, and that might be a bad decision, So I'm going to go do something because you're a woman out there. So, and I might lose myself because I, turned away and exposed my six or whatever it is, as they say. And she goes, "Wow." She goes, "That seems like that's your problem and not my problem." And I go, "What do you mean?" She goes, "Yeah, why are you, um, why are you impeding me, from whatever my goals are and whatever, just because you think you might do something odd because I'm a woman, but that's your problem." And I really made me kind of sit back and go, "Wow, that's really right. You're right. It is. I mean, it's my issue to work, not yours like this." And I think from that moment forward, I kind of, saw it differently like this. And then through the course of my career, certainly been associated with many, in this case, women aviators who have gone on to do great things. And I've shared with before, Nicole Malachowski was the first female Thunderbird, right wing, and um, remarkably talented. She's always had this dream. She went to the Air Force Academy, but always had this dream of being a fighter pilot like this. And obviously she was able to achieve that dream and ended up flying F-15Es, was a squadron commander in F-15Es, Thunderbird pilot, did remarkably well. Jeannie Levitt, and actually her husband, he went by call sign Yogi. We flew together in Korea, but Jeannie actually, went to fighter weapons school. I think she might even have been the commandant of the fighter weapons school. I mean, and did very, very well. Lori Robinson ends up being a 4-star general. She was the first combatant general, 4-star general, female general in the Air Force. Did remarkable. And I always kind of say, Lori Robinson was like the Pied Piper. I mean, people would follow her right off the cliff like this. I mean, and I always, kind of, for me, leadership and competency is not gender specific. It's not like this. And why do we make it gender specific? The only thing that I kind of, I would say, agree with is that if somebody has established certain criteria, for a particular role or whatever is like this, that the criteria not be altered. I mean, it just stays the same. But, kind of, gender agnostic. If somebody can meet the criteria like this, the door should be wide open. And again, the issues that I've heard about the resistance, for instance, LGBTQs or women like this, it's not them, it's them. I mean, it's like, it's my issue, it's not your issue. I mean, I had this one member in MOAA, like, I don't want to have some, whatever in my foxhole or whatever it is. I go, well, that's your problem. I'm not their problem like this. You got to work through that, not them like this. And so anyway, I just, it's a little bit disappointing now because like I said, I've witnessed such remarkable talent and competency and leadership, and I say it's not gender specific. It's not. And so I don't know why we're making it that way, but hope it, kind of gets resolved.
So I know you've shared many lessons today, but can you share kind of a little bit more about how, lessons from your military career shaped your leadership philosophy?
Yeah. And I mean, for me, it's people, right? I mean, you're flying a machine, like if you're a pilot, you're driving a tractor or whatever it is, if you're driving a tractor like this, but what you're leading is people, right? I mean, it's the human element that really leadership applies to like this. And so my whole philosophy has been, one is to witness, leadership, in action and how it actually positively influenced people, positively influenced mission execution, and so, my philosophy is just to, again, just open up the aperture and make sure that you're recognizing those kind of leadership moments, and then archive them. You have to, kind of mentally archive all that stuff. And like I say, and then when you have the opportunity, when you're in the seat and it's your opportunity to lead, then you open that book back up, and you go through there and you review that. And I say, there's a difference between imitating and emulating, but you need to emulate, the kind of the positive things, the positive leadership, and you need to distance yourself from the negative aspects of leadership. There's so many, unfortunately, there's so many, there's as many negative ones, that you'll witness as you find good ones like this. And you don't, all the leadership books that most of them that I've read, they all focus on positive leadership. They don't focus on negative leadership. I mean, because, you may not recognize negative leadership if you saw it like this. And then, I think people would be served well, right? If they saw, kind of what negative leadership looks like and how it can, organizationally distract, both individually and organizationally, how it can distract everybody like this. When I always remember this thing about, well, first of all, I think communications is a really, really big part of leadership. I mean, you have to have the ability to communicate effectively. You can't talk in acronyms, when you're talking to people. You have to, communicate. There's a paradox. Actually, I was in my very first, PME came in 3 different chapters, and I think Squadron Officer School was the first one, and then Staff College, and then War College were the kind of 3 chapters. But in Squadron Officer School, they made us watch this video, and it was called The Road to Abilene. I don't know if you've ever seen that. You should look that one up. But it's a paradox, right? So the video is about this family. So they wake up on a nice summer morning, and the dad decides, hey, everybody, let's go to Abilene today. Let's go to Abilene and go get, ice cream cones at the Dairy Queen. And, they've got the old station wagon, with the wood grain sides on it or something like this. And so everybody gets in the car and they drive to Abilene, so you got mom and dad and the kids and the dog barking in the back, and they're all going to Abilene. But it gets really bad. I mean, no air conditioning, windows down. I mean, what you end up finding out is because there's no communication. It just dad goes, let's go to Abilene and go get ice cream cones at the Dairy Queen. And then everybody kind of, okay, okay. Well, if you really surveyed everybody and said, okay, let's have honest, open communication, you might find out that the mom doesn't want to go to Abilene today. She's made an arrangement, to whatever it was and like this, and now she's going to have to break that and whatever it is. And the daughter didn't want to go to Abilene because whatever it is. And the son didn't want to go to Abilene, but nobody ever said a thing. Nobody said a thing. They just all jump in the car, and it goes downhill like this. And so I'm not doing the video or the story it's justice, but it really is. And I still think about it. I mean, in fact, even when I see this scenario like this, when I realize that, hey, there's no communication, nobody's being honest, nobody's sharing thoughts and ideas and, whatever it is, I go, oh, I guess we're on the road to Abilene like this. I mean, it's just, it's easy to say that because we're going someplace that nobody wants to go to, but nobody's going to say, not me. But anyway.
That's a great analogy. I like that visual.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you think back on your career, 35 years in uniform and then private sector and then nonprofit. What stands out as one of the most rewarding experiences of your journey?
Family. Yeah, I always say the best thing the Air Force ever gave me was a wife like this who I love dearly. I mean, that's what 45 years to this year's 45 years. A son who I love dearly, who's now in the Air Force himself, like this.
Oh, wow.
And a daughter who I love dearly, and she's doing well. And I mean, it's amazing how, when you ever ask somebody like this, you go, hey, what do you miss about the military? They always say the people, the people. No, they don't miss, getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning. No, they don't miss, doing rucksack marches. No, they don't miss whatever's like this. But what they do miss is the people. And what was it about the people that's different than, let's just say, in the public and private sector? What's different? I go, well, a committed sense, to what you're doing like this, discipline, loyalty, what's the old adage? We'll never leave a soldier behind like this. I mean, there's so many aspects about the military, and it's all about, again, people and family and those kind of things, that I kind of think about a lot. And particularly family. I go, as the days go by like this, your group of friends, on your email list was pretty big. And then, the next year it's slightly smaller, and the next year it's slightly smaller. I always tell my wife, I go, our Christmas card list every year, right? And my wife keeps all these remarkable records like this. I sent these Christmas cards out and I got these returned. I mean, it's not like she's looking for, or we're looking for reciprocal, exchange. It's just kind of like, hey, well, I guess we just lost sight of them, or, it wasn't done intentionally or whatever like this. It's just that gets smaller and smaller. But when you look back on the porch of the house, your family's still there like this, it's still your wife, it's still your parents, it's still the family like this. And so I always try now, if I've learned anything, it's about that's the enduring part, of my life. I mean, I've got remarkable friends from my military career like this, but somewhere down the line, I'm not going to get that Christmas card from them. I'm not going to get an email exchange. I'm not going to get the phone call. I'm not going to whatever. And it's not done bad. I mean, I'm not saying this is bad. I'm just kind of saying it's just the reality of it like this. But you might have a bad day, and I guarantee you, your family will still rally around you. You have good days, and they rally around you like this. And so I think I've really gained just a greater appreciation for that aspect of my life. But I just do reflect on, every time I this is probably the bad example, but you go into a fast food restaurant or whatever it was. I mean, we went the other day, my wife and I, and this guy who's working in a restaurant had just gone off, and he's just kind of a wacko. And I looked at my wife and I go, man, you'd never see that, in the military like this. I mean, you just wouldn't see that like this. But, I have a friend, my wife and I were actually interested in maybe, getting into an entrepreneurial or a business venture. And so I called a friend who had two of these enterprises that we were interested in. And I said, hey, how did this go? And he goes, well, it's not as good as you think it is like this. He goes, first of all, this business that you want, you can't pick where you're going to have it. I mean, he goes, the one I got was given to me in Chicago, and I'm not even from that area like this. But so I go to Chicago, I start this business. It's not the best, business location in the world. But he goes, the part that really that you have absolutely no control over that, is the workforce. I mean, you've got to hire these people, and you need a workforce to kind of make this work. And it's not like when we were in the military. I mean that the quality control. I mean, just to get into the military. I mean, there's quality control just to get into the military like this. Whether it's education or disciplinary, legal, and it goes on and on like this. And so you're already cream and skimming off the cream like this, and then you're just making it better, right, through training and good leadership and exposure to that. But I see it every day in local businesses like this. I just go, how do they survive? I mean but you got these business. I go, business must be really good because they don't even return your phone call. If you want somebody to do something, you don't even get a return phone call. So I go, I just don't think it, I had an opportunity, in our service sector. When we were in Misawa, Japan, they won the outstanding services of the entire Air Force. And the first thing was they all had vision, right? So they came to me as the commander. They all had this vision. We'd like to do this. We'd like to do this. We'd like to do this. They just needed the resources. So I was in a position at one time, to give them the resources to basically to optimize, or get their vision like this. And then they wanted on to do kind of super stuff. But I used to always tell everybody, I go, hey, running like services, for instance, I don't know if it's a bowling alley or if it's a restaurant or whatever, it's like this. I go, it's not like a science project like this. It's pretty simple, right? I go, it goes back to the thing. What makes you happy makes me happy. Let's just talk about a restaurant. If you go to a restaurant, what's going to make you, for instance, Hannah, you and Jeremy go to a restaurant. What will make you guys go back? What will make you guys go back? Well, first of all, the quality of the service, quality of the food, that the food or you thought was reasonably priced. And I go, okay, well, let me ask you this question. What will make you and Jeremy never go back there again? Never go back there again. Well, just the opposite, right? Bad service, bad food quality, overpriced, dirty. I mean, again, I go, man, it just seems like running a business would be too easy. I know I'm making that very simplistic like this, but it doesn't take a lot, this is one of my fond stories too. Again, when I was at Shaw, me, I'm a golfer and I like golfing like this. And so I'd go out to the golf course but at that time, the 20th Fighter Wing was under TAC had shifted to what they call ACC. So Air Combat Command. So Air Combat Command had, this structure like this. And I think it must have been like 22 wings or something like that within Air Combat Command. Anyway, and Air Force bases, we jokingly say they all build a golf course before they build a runway. So Shaw has a really nice golf course like this. But if you go into the data reports at the time, if you went into the data reports, I'm just making this up right now, out of 20 kind of facilities, Shaw's golf course was number 17, on revenue and rounds per play, rounds per played and whatever it was. And so I had gone out to the golf course one time, and the guy's name was Taylor, and he was running the golf course, and he was a really polite gentleman. And I go, "Hey, Taylor, what do we got to do to, get us up on, on the golf course here like this, kind of getting the hate mail here about, hey, what's going on here like this?" I go, we got this golf course. It's in South Carolina. That's kind of like the Mecca of golf. You got, think of all the golf courses and, noted golf courses all the way through South Carolina. And we're having trouble here like this. He goes, "Well, sir, it's hard to compete." And I go, "What's hard to compete?" He goes, "Well, they got a golf course outside here. They just opened up a brand new golf course, and, they got these twilight hours, and you could get 18 holes of golf after 3 o'clock in the afternoon with cart, for like $15. And I go, "Why can't we do that?" "Well, sir, we can't do that." "Well, we have to pay, for maintenance, course maintenance and employees, and they come under the non-appropriate fund thing. And, even if you have a part-time employee, you got to pay all these, healthcare and eye care and dental, and, it just costs a lot of money." And I go, "Really?" I said, "Well, Taylor, let me ask you something. How much does it cost to maintain this golf course?" And he goes, "Well, sir, it costs." And I go, "Well, I tell you how much it costs, because I know, because I'm the wing commander. I'm the guy that has to look at all this kind of stuff like this." And I don't know what the number was. Let me just, say, just for academic purposes. Said, "Well, Taylor, it costs $300,000 a year to maintain this golf course, whether you get one golfer or you get 100 golfers. It's a fixed cost. It costs $300,000 a year. So your job now is to get, that 100 golfers like this, so that we can reinvest, and recover some of that cost." I said, "So let me do this. I'm going to tell you how to get well." And he said, "How's that, sir?" I go, "Give golf away." I go, "What?" I said, "Yeah, give golf away." He goes, "Sir, I don't understand what you're saying. Like, that sounds crazy like this." I go, "Well, it doesn't sound crazy. It didn't sound crazy to a guy named Sam Walton. You ever heard of Sam Walton? He's got this enterprise called Walmart like this." And Sam Walton had this thing called loss leader marketing. Loss leader marketing is he would sell something in Walmart that is at or below cost like this, so that he could get what he called opportunity sales. So when you go into Walmart and you're going to go buy, I go, here's a classic example. I said, my wife and I, my son's going to Clemson University. And so my wife is looking at the paper and she goes, "Hey, honey, look they got this small microwave that Jeff could have in his dorm room like this. It's at Walmart, and it's like, God, it's just dirt cheap like this." I go, "So we go to Walmart to buy this dirt cheap microwave like this, and we leave Walmart with this shopping cart full." I go, "It's when you go in there, it's like bass bait. I mean, this stuff all over the place, and you can't get away from it like this." And so he had this concept. I mean, again, there was other things about, centralized distribution, all that kind of stuff. But the loss leader marketing, and they still use that right now. They just, you get in the store, and then it's called opportunity sales. And then they put other stuff in front of you like this, and it isn't at or below cost. It's, that's where they're building their profit margins. And I go, so if you give golf away, I go, first of all, you're going to do two things. One, you're going to satisfy an issue that I have, and that is trying to keep my airmen on installation. I'd rather than play in my backyard than in play in somebody else's backyard where there's no observation, supervision, et cetera, like that. I go, and the other thing is, so like Sam Walton's, what's the likelihood now that you give golf away, and one of your golfer who comes out here who got golf for free buys a soda, in the snack bar, or buys a cheeseburger, after it's all said and done, or maybe buys a sleeve of golf balls that's in the pro shop, or buys a golf shirt, that you got hanging on the rack in a golf shop like this. I go, pretty high. And I go, and think about the mentality of that. I go, so I just went in, I got golf for free. So I think to myself, man, I didn't even have to pay for golf. That might have, let me just make this up. That might have been $20. And then there's this really nice golf shirt sitting on the rack, and it's $47. And I go, oh man, I'm going to get that golf shirt, because really that golf shirt only cost me $27 because I didn't have to pay for golf. Well, no, it really didn't, because you know what went into the cash register? $47, not $27. I mean, again, a lot of it's mental and how a consumer sees things. So I go, so we did that. And we kind of went off the charts, and I did that at the bowling alley too. The bowling alley was another place that was really suffering, but I said, hey, what about like on Saturday mornings or something like this? We just give we give bowling away for
Mhm.
free like this. So you know what we had to end up doing? We had to hire more employees, and most of them had to hire more employees for the snack bar. Because, for
Oh,
instance, like parents would come in there and they just throw their kids all over these
yeah.
bowling alleys. And they sit back in the back watching their kids eating, and they're eating French fries, eating a cheeseburger,
Mhm.
drinking a soda, or whatever like this. I mean, basically the sectors that were generating revenue shifted
Mhm.
around like this,
Mhm.
but the overall went up like this. And I go, so I just I had fun with that, just
Yeah.
trying to, try to get people to think out of the box a little bit like this.
Yeah.
And I've never run a business in my life like this, and oh, by the way, where did I get all that from? A Business Week magazine. So, so I was reading Business Week, and it was this whole thing on Sam Walton. This whole thing on
Yeah.
Walton, loss leader marketing, centralized distribution. I mean, how he built his
Yeah.
his enterprise, I guess, or
Yeah.
empire.
Yeah.
But but those things obviously apply across the board.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'd read that that's why milk and eggs are in the back of the store because they're doing a
Oh, you got
loss.
to drive through the
You
whole,
got to
yeah,
go through the whole
yeah,
thing.
yeah. You got to go
Yeah.
by the potato chip aisle.
Exactly. So that shopping cart will be full by the
Yeah,
time you get there and back.
yeah.
So, can you share some insights in leading people or organizations during, particularly difficult times, challenging times?
Yeah. Well, it goes back to, I guess, again, some of the challenging times for me obviously were after fatality mishaps and stuff.
Mhm.
And I, I mentioned the thing about why the Germans bomb Pearl Harbor
Mhm.
like this. I mean, just a little bit of humor or whatever.
Mhm.
But I think the one of the more challenging times actually wasn't in the military, is more in the private sector. So leading MOAA during COVID. And so we had transitioned, to remote work environments.
Mhm.
And then along with remote work environments came
Mhm.
demands not only from the membership, but came
Mhm.
demands from the workforce like this.
Mhm.
I go, and then some of the social upheaval that was happening in our
Mhm.
country, became a demand as well. I mean,
Mhm.
I can remember the Floyd incident, and then
Mhm.
employees saying, "Well, sir, you need to have a voice in this thing like this. You need to." There was employees asking me to use my voice as the president and CEO of MOA to make a statement about police brutality.
Mhm.
There was the incident I think it was in Charlottesville, where there was, again, kind of I would call it, a racist type of incident. I think some guy drove through a crowd and
Mhm.
and injured some people. And again, they're wanting me to take a stance on that. MOA at that time had a relationship with the USAA auto
Mhm.
insurance, and we would help them advertise to our membership, because USA has a kind of a wide breadth of product portfolios, not only insurance but financial services and others like this. And so we would make some revenue, just kind of royalties, I guess it would be called, off of that. But USAA at the time also was a supporter of NFL, National Football League,
Mhm.
and our membership came back to me and said, "Hey, you need to stop your royalty arrangement with USAA because they're supporting the NFL, and the NFL allows their players to kneel, during the national anthem." And for our membership, um, that was just disruptive, as a veteran and whatever.
Mhm.
And the reality is, it had nothing to do with our mission. I mean, it
Mhm.
certainly, um, I don't say anything wrong with individuals that didn't like that. I mean, they didn't like the theater that it was happening in, and they didn't like that. But it's not MOA's position to
Mhm.
basically take a. I mean, again, we're a 501c19 chartered to basically support veterans and their families, better their lives. So the things like SPP, DIC, the things like
Mhm.
VAQ,
Mhm.
the things like Chapter 61. I mean, the list goes on and on and on.
Mhm.
It doesn't necessarily mean that we have to spend all of our energy and resources, basically getting on our soapbox and rallying around particular social issues that are facing our nation right here. But then, the employees during the COVID like this, they started talking about remote, and I actually I would call it, I morphed a bit, because I was not. I mean, again, first of all, at first the remote thing was pretty much forced on you. I mean, but then it became over time optional to keep, remote work environments. And what I saw was, again, not necessarily a loss of productivity. I mean, in some cases, the same productivity. I mean, in some cases, maybe you could even interpret it as more productivity because somebody was active from 7 a.m. till 9 p.m. Not necessarily straight through, but hey, it's later in the evening, nothing's on TV, kids are asleep, well, you'll jump on your computer and you'll do a few things on your computer. So there's still some activity and maybe some contribution going towards our mission. So I kind of morphed a little bit and kind of got that. But then, then there was, again, a move to get back in the office. And again, because I mean, there are certain aspects of in the office that I think are positive. I mean, social interaction, the ability to, like, I mean, looking at you right now, just the ability to see body language like this, you can, you get more interpretation out of that. But then, there was kind of a revolt about coming. I mean, people had kind of altered their lives around remoteness, so, maybe they used to have 2 vehicles and now they only have 1 vehicle, because they didn't have to drive into the office anymore. Maybe they opened up their house and brought in an elderly parent and now took on a, kind of a caregiver role that they never had before. Maybe they had small children that were, in, like in childcare centers like this, but now they're back home and now they don't have, and there's not an opportunity to get back into a childcare center because there are some capacity issues there. I mean, so there was this kind of, just kind of, again, snowballing effort, around the COVID and the aspects of remote work environments. And then you had, again, one of the issues that, I opposed was one of our employees wanted the MOAA to pay for in vitro fertilization. Again, I go, hey, listen, I applaud you for wanting to have a family. I'm all supportive of that like this, but it's not MOAA's resources. It shouldn't be MOAA's resources that pay for a decision that you and your spouse are making like this to do in vitro fertilization. So, but there was a lot of, I mean, so the employees were looking through this lens of other businesses, that were certainly larger and resource way larger than us. They say, well, look at, this company's doing it like this. Well, this company, I mean, I don't know how, whatever, but their profits are like, I remember one time somebody said, forget what it was. It was, why don't you, in advertising, because we were trying to advertise some stuff like this. Well, why can't you, be more effective? And I said, well, because we only have a certain amount of budget. I mean, to spend advertising is expensive. I go, hey, how much do you think USAA spends on advertising in a calendar year? How much and I mean, it's like off the chart. It's like $500 million. It's like I mean, that's why when you watch TV, I mean, a USAA TV ad comes on every 30 seconds like this. I mean, I go, we don't have that breadth. And the same thing, they used to use ARP a lot. My board of directors, would use ARP, they say, well, ARP, well, how many members does ARP have? We have 300 and, something 63,000 members like this, and ARP has like 36 million or whatever it is. So, I mean, the scope of it, is, the scale was way different, but you can't take and take that scale and then overlay it on us like this. It's not apples and apples. And so, it was challenging to work through, some of the employee demands, because I said they were seeing this happening in other business units, but they're not apples and apples business unit comparisons like this. And so, just trying to work your way through that. Just difficult times.
Yeah. It has to be case by case basis, very, very unique to the situation.
Yeah, and again, I'll be very honest with you. I'm kind of old guard, right? And so, I mean, I remember my HR director come to me, and we had one employee who wanted to bring a dog to work like this, and I'm going, really? Why? Well, it's a therapy dog, and this individual's experiencing some issues, whatever, and supposedly the therapy dog helps, whatever, like this. I mean, and I was okay with it. I mean, that was a neat dog anyway, like this, like this. But I just, you come out of the military and somebody would look at you and go, bring a dog to work like this. Well, you better be a military working dog like this. You're not just going to bring a dog to work or something like this. I mean, again, we kind of grew up in this environment, where, sit down and color, that's, somebody would just tell you what to do. And I'm not saying blind obedience is the way, but I mean, you grew up in that environment. And so when people are kind of, making demands, sometimes they seemed a bit unrealistic, I guess, but I softened, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, I had to grow too, right? I mean, some of the demands weren't, they weren't unreasonable. I mean, I had to grow myself.
Yeah. Well, your dedication to getting to know your people, whether it's, airmen or employees, kind of understanding where they're coming from, I'm sure helps with situational kind of analysis, and then you make those decisions.
Yeah.
So throughout your career, what's been kind of like your guiding principle or personal mission? I know you've had so many different commands and roles and leadership positions, but what's kind of that grounding truth or focus for you?
I just, maybe it's just trying to, be the best you can be, I guess. I mean, a lot of times when I spoke, to those that I was leading, I would use like sports analogies. I don't know that sports analogies are always the right analogy to work like this, but I said, if you're building world-class teams, you want world-class athletes, right? And there's a lot of people that that literally would qualify as a world-class athlete, because they can run, 100 yards in 9.9 seconds, or they can jump 40 inches, or they can whatever, it's like this. And they might be categorized as a world-class athlete, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be a GOAT, the greatest of all time, because they didn't put the work into it like this. I mean, they came to the table with a lot of raw skill like this, but they never, so, you always like say, look back on athletes and you say, well, how did these guys get so good? I mean, if you look at, for instance, these outstanding, for instance, Hall of Fame, football players, they would say, hey, listen, I'd get to the training facility before anybody else got there like this. I'd work out after, our scheduled, training time like this. I'd review tapes over and over and over. So I knew exactly what that other player was going to do. I could read it before I knew it before they even knew it like this. I mean, and so I think that it has been a guiding thing for me. I mean, again, work harder than the next guy. I mean, I just remember, when we went to pilot training, you're sitting in this room or whatever it was, and the guy at the front of class, he goes, take a look at the guy on your left and take a look at the guy on your right, because one of you isn't going to be here when this is all over like this. And, I just remember you had one guy in our class, Dennis D'Angelo. I mean, he washed out. You kind of go, God, he's a pretty good guy, and he's a pretty good pilot, but he just didn't apply himself. He just didn't apply himself. And when I was in pilot training like this, I mean, I think I came there with some raw talent like this, but I recognized pretty early, that I was going to have some difficulties in the advanced portion if I didn't, get in the books and start reading stuff and know stuff that, that I was supposed to know like this. And there's your raw talent will take you so far. And then at that point, you're just, it's not going to take you any farther, and you got to go farther, so again, just, I go back to, I go, hey, when I was given an opportunity, I mean, did I have to go get a new flight suit? No. Did I have to go get a haircut? Did I have to polish my boots? Did I have to do the brief room with straight lines? No, I didn't have to do that, but it's, I guess it's in my DNA, right? This, I mean, to just not necessarily be a perfectionist, because again, that can be a negative sometimes. If you just, when 99% is pretty good and you're trying to get to 100% like this, I go, you might be wasting a lot of time and a lot of resources to get that extra 1%. But you should still, yeah, you have to demand yourself to do your very best like this. And again, I've always told everybody at the end of the day like this, if you're honest with yourself and you gave it your very, very best like this, then you should be proud. You should, be proud. Even if you didn't make the goal or whatever it was, you should still be proud. But if you could kind of go, you know what, I could have jumped a little higher like this. I mean, I could have ran a little faster. I forget what this, there was this business analogy about somebody, oh yeah, somebody in a deal would say, if they're looking out in this big auditorium, right? All right, everybody, raise your hands as high as you can. No, even higher. And they go higher.
Yeah.
Right? They just said right there, raise your hands as high as you can. No, even higher, which tells you got more in you like this. I mean, you could, so anyway, I just kind of always fall back on, hey, just always trying to do my best like this. I mean, and and some people are, again, recognize some people are more gifted. They are just at certain things, right? There's, more, they're just more gifted at certain things. I mean, I can't dunk a basketball like this. I mean, no matter how I tried, I probably jump off a trampoline and still not be able to do it like this. But some people are just more gifted like this. But if you can, like I say, if you can raise your hand as high as you can, and that's as far as it's going to go, then you did your best.
That's great advice. That's great advice. So are there any kind of resources that you found particularly useful in your career journey?
Well, you've asked me this before about books and whatever it is. I mean, I always, a lot of people were disappointed when, their particular sister service told them that they had to go to professional military education. And I always found those to be great environments. I mean, again, you learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot about teamwork. You learn a lot about other people and how to get along with people that maybe you just, hey, I'm not going to go party with that person, but I still got to get along with them like this. And so, and then you get in these environments where typically almost all of those had a setting where, take the gloves off. And then, people have had an opportunity to observe you like over the last 6 months. Okay, now take your gloves off and give Dana some honest feedback like this. And sometimes you're going to go, oh, really? Like this. I mean, because sometimes you're going to hear stuff, that you don't necessarily think you want to hear like this. But it's very, very helpful like this. I've always found, the leadership books, you always hear people go, oh, read this, read that. And I mentioned before, most always those leadership books are, they focus on the positive aspects of leadership like this, not necessarily some of the negative ones that I think are just as important to recognize. But a lot of those are, I would call time and space, right? If you went and read a book about, Patton's leadership or whatever it was like this, well, hey, today Patton would be in federal prison like this. I mean, if you did the things that Patton did or whatever, I mean, again, and I say those leadership things seem to work kind of in time and space. There are certain, vignettes, I guess, that carry over, I think, from that. But in most cases, I think it's just the resources really is to get yourself involved with stuff, that's you wouldn't naturally do. I mean, I think even like today, now that I'm retired like this, I mean, I think for me, the thing that's positive is to get into like voluntary organizations. I mean, that certainly give you some appreciation of what you can give back. I mean, I'm very fortunate. I mean, I mentioned before, I grew up from a very blue collar family, didn't have a lot of resources, and if you were to ask me in 1972 where I was going to be today like this, it certainly probably was that factory worker, right? I just didn't see these things in my life. I didn't see being a pilot. I didn't see him having a successful military career. I didn't have the, you know, president and CEO of 2 different companies. And I never saw any of that kind of stuff. But it can happen, right? It can happen with hard work and people will be supportive of you if they, you know, if they honestly believe, you know, you're making a contribution, you're trying hard, you're honest with them, you're not disrespectful.
Mhm. I know we had you look backwards earlier today, but looking forward, what developments are you most hopeful for in terms of kind of our future?
Well, it doesn't have anything to do with the military.
Yeah.
It doesn't, you know, it's just, I think, and I don't think I'm alone in this one. I would just like to see our nation get along.
Mhm.
I guess, I mean, and I don't know what it's going to take.
Mhm.
You know, you know, I witnessed my own, you know, circle of friends, and you know, if you're a person who's on Facebook and all of a sudden, you know, you see somebody who unfriended you, and you kind of going, well, why did that happen like this?
Yeah.
Well, it's not anything you did or anything you said. They just they saw you as a conservative, you know, and they're maybe more liberally, you know,
Mhm.
or something like this. And so they just don't want anything to do with you. And I'm kind of going, wow, I've not changed one bit. I mean, I'm still who I am. You know, I still have the same core values. I still have, you know, but, right now it's just so dysfunctional. I mean, I love our nation so much, and we have so much promise like this, but to see, you know, I mean, even when I was in MOAA, I mean, you just saw it every day when I went up to Capitol Hill, you know, if a vote came up or whatever it was like this, is right along party lines. If they like red, then we like black. Or if they want blue, we want whatever it is. I mean, it's kind of like, wow, there's just no compromise. I remember the, I think they called it pork barrel or whatever it was like this. You know, this one, actually he was a staffer of a senior senator. And I said, how do you think you fix this? He goes, well, one of the things you can do is bring back pork barrel, which means kind of like, you know, you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back like this. And he goes, but there was a policy change in Congress, you know, decades ago or whatever it was, that, you know, before, for instance, you know, somebody would vote positively for something that you wanted if you vote positively for something that they wanted. So it's, you know, scratch your back, I'll scratch I mean, you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. But that doesn't exist anymore. So there's no incentive to get along. None, absolutely no incentive. And because you don't have an incentive, you know, to compromise or get along, they don't like this. And so, you know, we're just caught in this spiral like this. And, you know, so I guess, you know, I just like to see, you know, things get better like this. You know, I certainly, you know, again, you know, more than half of my life, well, actually not now, just half, because I'm 71 now, but half of my life, you know, was in the military. And so certainly I have, you know, great sentiment, you know, for the military and veterans and their families, and recognize what quality of life really means. You know, I mean, you know, you can't do enough, you know, for our service members and their families. I mean, when it comes to quality of life, I mean, people kind of go, you know, well, you get everything given to you, don't you? You know, you get free healthcare, you get free what? I mean, what do you mean you get everything given to you like this? Why don't you go over to Kabul, Afghanistan, and spend a year over there like this, and tell me what was given to me like this? You know, I don't mean that in a bad way. It kind of sounded bad, but you know, I just remember my very first, you know, overseas assignment was in the UK, where my son was born like this. And you don't realize, you know, what you had at home like this. I mean, first of all, stores weren't open after 5 o'clock, you know, I mean, so, you know, you're used to, oh, you know, we need some more milk or need eggs for tomorrow's breakfast, whatever it is, we'll go to the store. Well, you're not going to the store tonight like this, because there's no store open like this, you know. Like gas. I mean, I remember, you know, when we went over, we had these coupon books, luckily, you know, when we were over in Europe like this, but gas was sold by the liter. And I forget how many liters in a gallon like this, but it was sold by the liter, because you see it on this, you know, like right now, if you go by and you see it on the service station and it might have, you know, 3.19, you know, that's for a gallon. Well, it's had 3.19 on the same one over in the UK, but that was for a liter. And there's like 3 point something liters in a gallon. You kind of go, well, it's like $10 a gallon. I mean, there's so many things that, you know, but you dealt with that too. And then, you know, you and Jeremy have been like this too. How many moves? And again, I went where the Air Force sent me like this. but
Sure.
every move is somewhat subsidized by yourself like this.
Mhm.
You know, you go into a new house and again, I guarantee you're going to want curtains on the windows. You're going to,
Mhm.
a rug on the floor. You're going to want, whatever it is like this. And, that didn't come with the move. Like,
Mhm. Mhm.
and I mean, I asked my wife, it's 20 something moves in 35 years.
Yeah.
I forget what it was. And each one of those had some aspect
Yeah.
of subsidizing yourself like this. And,
Mhm.
so, I'd like to be able, you like to be able, I mean, you see corporate America, if they move somebody in their
Mhm.
company like this, they pay for their entire move, they pay for
Mhm.
their relocation, they pay for the, whatever commission they paid on the sale of a house
Mhm.
or the purchase of their new house, they pay. I mean, it's just, kind of went, well, it is different like this. And it's not all about material and money and I mean, it's just, it would be nice to see some parity like this,
Yeah.
between, what our service men and women, deal with
Yeah.
in our nation. We're a pretty wealthy nation. I mean, even though the stock market's tumbling right now, but we're a pretty wealthy nation, and there
Mhm.
shouldn't be any issue, with and I mean, just like you say, and even the entitlements and stuff like this,
Mhm.
they're earned entitlements. They're not
Mhm.
necessarily, they're not, what do you call it, gifts or whatever it's like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Well, no, we can accomplish so much by working together on these initiatives. That's something that just kind of it's something that I feel like so many people aren't aware of, kind of the power of working together, and they just want to stay kind of in polarized, divided camps.
right.
And then, it takes 20 years to pass or repeal widow's tax or
Right.
the things that we're looking at now.
Well, I mean, again, to me, it's getting so much more, kind of muddy, right? I mean, with
Mhm.
social media and
Mhm.
fake news and
Yeah.
now AI coming in there. I mean, I
Yeah.
just saw something the other day with, the Masters is starting this week or whatever it was, and they
Mhm.
showed some really, I forget who the guy was with a cigar in his mouth like this. It's all AI
Mhm.
like this. I
Yeah.
mean, but it looks really real. It looks like,
Yeah.
you've probably seen some before where you have some, recognizable, notable politician, and
Yeah.
he's given a speech or she's given a speech, and you swear it's them, and it
Mhm.
and it's all, it's
Mhm.
all done artificially like this, and they
Mhm.
never did that speech. I mean, but
Yeah.
how do you, how do you sort out, fact from
Yeah.
fiction nowadays? It's just, that
Yeah.
makes it a little tougher to do like that too. So,
Yeah.
this whole information. I mean, I grew up when we went to Europe for the very first time. The only communication we had with home, was a telephone,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
it cost 10 pence, I think. I forget what 10 pence was. 10 pence a pip. What was a pip? Well, when you picked up the phone and you're talking long distance, you talk to your family, like, I'm talking to my mom and dad. In the background, you hear this pip, pip,
Oh gosh.
pip, pip. And each one of those was a cycle. And that was, it's kind of like 10
Wow.
cents, 10 cents, 10 cents, 10 cents. I mean, it's just like I say, but now, communication is instantaneous, and it's,
Mhm.
unfortunately polluted like this again
Mhm.
with false information. So again, my,
Mhm.
biggest dream, right, is just to, I mean, I just love our nation so much, and we have so much promise and potential still, and to see it so divided right now. I mean,
Mhm.
and to even see some of your best friends,
Mhm.
are divided with you like this. I
Mhm.
mean, it's not that we don't necessarily agree or disagree.
Mhm.
It's just, I don't know, you just swarm to one side, and it's,
Yeah. Mhm. So, do you have any kind of final words of advice for the audience as they venture out?
yeah. Well, I mean, I hope we covered a lot of that right now, right? So,
Mhm.
I mean, again, I think, um, hard work, hard
Mhm.
work, honesty, ethical, all those things end up at the end of the day, paying real big dividends. And, when you start making choices in life, I mean, I told you I made the military a choice, but
Mhm.
at the time it was, I chose the military because I saw that as as a resource opportunity. I wanted to go to college, and the military said, "Hey, you come spend 4 years with us, and we'll give you the GI Bill, which will help like this." But I think at the end of the day, what I would tell people like this is you have to make choices that are truly, in your heart and your passion. You can't, I mean, if you're going to follow something like this, I mean, if you're going to say, well, I'm going to go try to make as much money as I want, I mean, you're going to make that choice, but realize there might be some, distraction with that. I mean, I remember when I retired, somebody said, okay, listen, you got to think about these things. Where do you want to live? Geographically, where do you want to be? How much money do you want to make? You want to, whatever it was, on and on. What kind of, do you want a job that's over consuming, or do you want a job, that, it's not over, you have some free time and you can travel and whatever, at the end of the day, I mean, they always say, if you pick something that is truly your passion like this, then you never have a job, right? It's always a hobby. I'm going today to go do my hobby rather than have a job. Like I always tell everybody, man, if I had it my way, I'd be the guy riding a tractor on a golf course, cutting fairways like this, just wind blowing in your hair like this, smelling fresh grass cut and like this. I mean, that would be kind of like a hobby like this. But you make choices, I mean, I always, I saw how much my parents worked, how hard they worked, to try to provide. And my wife and I think try to do the same thing, try to provide for our family. Today I don't see my family having the same opportunities that I had like this. I mean, I look at both my son and his wife and my daughter and her husband, and both of them have to work, right? I mean, to have the same kind of reasonable quality of life, they have to have two incomes. I mean, a single income just, unless you're fortunate, one of those fortunate ones like this, a single income just doesn't get you past the goalposts. And so anyway, I just think, again, at the end of the day, just, you have to pick something that's really, truly in your passion. We had one guy come to PME and say, I remember talking about being an expert at things. He said, oh, you got to read 1,000 books in that discipline if you want to consider yourself an expert. I go, man, I haven't read 1,000 magazines, let alone 1,000 books or something like this. So, and then the last part is to accept failure. Accept failure as being a learning moment too. A lot of people kind of say, well, if they fail at something, then it's all over. I mean, there's a lot of stories about very, very successful business people who have had multiple failed businesses, but they didn't fold up the shop, right? They just kind of, regathered themselves, refocused themselves, put their energy back someplace else, and ultimately became a success somehow like this. So knowing that failure is not necessarily the end of the roadmap for you like this. But again, a lot of the things I mean, fell in my lap, and I'm not disappointed at that, because, at the end of the day, I mean, I told you I was going to be a pediatrician and that never happened, but things fell in my lap, and I think they continued to get better and better and better because I kept trying hard. I mean, I just kept trying hard. So.
Those are great advice. Great advice. Yeah, well, thank you so much, General Atkins, for coming on Tipping Spears and sharing your story. It was really interesting to me. I met you a few years ago after you had kind of all these accolades, and it was so fascinating to hear where you started out and how you got from point A to point B. Your work with MOAA, it has, directly impacted my own family's life and so many within our veteran community. So we really, really want to thank you for that.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
I think Hannah too, you asked me one time about the advocacy thing like this. I go, I mean, the people really do, you said this earlier, but people really do, they should try to find something where they can compound the effect. And that's by, finding something that appeals to you like this. It could be disabled veterans, it could be VFW, it could be MOAA, it could be any of those things like this. But what really is effective is when the voice, is like I said before, is powerful. So It's easy to, kind of sit in your own household and, and moan and groan and grunt and go, I wish I could change that like this. But effectively you can, like I say, just by becoming part of a larger organization.
That's great insights. Great insights. Well, to our listeners, thank you for joining us today for this episode of Tipping Spears. We hope today's conversation inspired fresh perspectives and sparked meaningful reflection about the road ahead. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time with another thought-provoking guest.